Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Saturday, the 9th of December. Today, integrating migrants into society is impossible at current levels. That's according to Robert Jenrick, who quit his cabinet position earlier this week.
And is it a Brexit-style divide? The parliamentary vote on the Rwanda deportation scheme threatens to rip the Tories in two. Experts comparing it to the crisis following the Brexit referendum.
As high streets across the country are struggling because of the cost of living crisis, traders hope millions of pounds worth of investment will help save Britain's traditional shopping centres. Will Hollis spoke to some of those affected.
Traders left. COVID killed 50% of the trade, and the place has looked really scruffy and dark and dismal for a few years now.
And later on, in Britain's biggest stories, we'll look back at former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's grilling during the COVID inquiry.
Do you know why your phone was missing those 5,000 odd WhatsApps?
I don't know the exact reason, but it looks as though it's something to do with the app going down and then coming up again.
And with yellow weather warnings on the way, Annie Shuttleworth has the latest forecast.
There are rain and wind warnings in force across the UK this weekend, but there are some chances of some fine weather. You can find out where and when with me a little bit later on.
And with all your sport, here's Aidan.
Yes, good morning. In the Premier League, Arsenal boss Mikel Arteta has warned that football's fun police are in danger of taking the joy out of the sport. Meanwhile, at Crystal Palace, boss Roy Hodgson apologises to his own fans.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Tell you what should be our top story this morning. Front of the Daily Star.
I'm a bit worried.
Santa's gone missing. Apparently, according to the Star.
We
don't worry.
Yeah, we don't have enough Santas to go round.
Well, enough... you know, for the stores.
Santas.
Pretend Santas. Not the real Santa's fine. He's fine.
Yeah.
But some of the people who help him out by going in the stores have dropped by 33%.
Well, is that because there's nobody to pretend to be Santa, or nowadays stores don't want to pay for one?
I don't know. But anyway, thankfully, the real one's absolutely fine.
Absolutely. But if you've ever been a pretend Santa in a store, I'd love to hear from you. What's it like?
Do you know, it was the St Nicholas Day last Wednesday.
No, I didn't know that. That's odd then, isn't it?
That was his...
That's his day.
That's his day, last Wednesday.
I tell you, other sad news though I've heard is about Ryan O'Neill, the actor.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
well,
does he know? Does that name mean much to you?
No, it doesn't. I'm afraid it's before my time.
I think it's a certain age group, and hopefully there's lots of people watching at the moment who feel the same as me. I mean, he was the ultimate heartthrob star of the whole of the 70s, probably, and 80s. early 80s. But he was very much a 70s phenomenon. But he was mega famous. He was the hunk. He was gorgeous. And the movie that shot him to absolute stardom, global stardom, was Love Story.
Oh, I'll tell you what, I recognise him.
Yeah, he's been in quite a few things since.
Yeah.
But Love Story with Ali McGraw, do you remember? And it was a story, it was a romance, and it was a tragedy, and it was just beautiful. And it absolutely rocked the 70s.
And he dated Farrah Fawcett.
Oh, yes, she was a very long-term girlfriend. I think he was married about 3 times. His daughter, Tatum O'Neill, starred with him in a movie called Paper Moon. Father-daughter, she was 10 and she got an Oscar for it.
Did she really?
She's the youngest person to ever get an Oscar. She got it for Best Supporting Actress, beating her dad. He didn't get an Oscar for it. I think he was nominated but didn't get it.
He'd be furious.
She got it at the age of 10. She was a mega actress as a little girl, had a very, very complicated life. And Ryan O'Neill's name has sort of faded into the background, so much so that you sort of thought he wasn't around anymore. Anyway, he has died at the age of 82, surrounded by a loving family, which is nice to hear. But yeah, it's rather sad, isn't it?
It's sad.
The closing of a chapter.
But it's interesting looking at him. I recognise the face. I've seen him in movies as an older actor.
Yes, that's right.
But I didn't realise he was one of the big stars of the silver screen.
Mega, yeah. It just shows how even the biggest names can sort of fade to almost obscurity, and he had, quite rightly so, living a much calmer, gentler life.
Oh, that sounds nice.
In 80 years. It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Anyway, Robert Jenrick isn't living a sort of calmer life, is he? He was in the Cabinet earlier this week and he's quit. He was the Immigration Minister. He's written a damning article warning that the Conservatives face red-hot fury from voters over its handling of the migration crisis.
Yes, in fact, he's written exclusively in The Telegraph today. The once close Sunak ally says that allowing historically unprecedented levels of migration is a best example of what he called a failed Westminster consensus, warning that centre-right parties across Europe will be punished at the ballot box if they don't handle the issue.
Well, Mr Jenrick also says it's impossible to have integration when you let, and this is a quote, 1.2 million new people, as we've done over the last 2 years.
Well, setting out his plans to tackle the crisis, the now ex-immigration minister says GP services and hospitals do not grow on trees.
Well, the spiralling crisis over the Rwanda scheme that the government's own advice says only has a 50% chance of working is now threatening to split the Conservatives as seriously as Brexit, apparently.
Well, and like Brexit, he argues the divide is causing voters to look for alternatives, with the insurgent Reform UK now regularly polling above 10%. That must be nipping away at the Tories' heels.
Let's talk to political correspondent Peter Spencer, who joins us now. Heck, Peter, what an awful lot of total chaos.
You could put it like that. I mean, I have to say that Rishi Sunak is in the mother of all pincer movements with his party, particularly over Rwanda. And it calls to mind, to my mind at least, the plight of the ancient Greek hero Odysseus when he was confronted with a man-eating monster that threatened to eat half his crew, or a whirlpool which would sink his ship. Now, it is to be noted that he did finally make it back to Ithaca, but when he did, he was on his Todd. Rishi Sunak's situation, it's impossible to overstate the situation, the difficulty that Rishi Sunak is in, because there is something like 100 of his own backbench MPs who are really, really concerned about the Rwanda deal and the potential for it breaking human rights laws. Basically, in their view, it goes much too far. At the same time, there's something like the same number on the right of the party who say it doesn't go far enough. Now, come Tuesday, there will be the second reading, or it's scheduled the second reading of the emergency legislation supposed to fix it all. And the normal deal is that that you don't actually get a government defeat at second reading stage. It comes later when you chip away at the edges. However, it would only take 29 Tory MPs to actually vote against this legislation for it to fall. Now, when you've got these disparate elements all over the place, it is within the bounds of possibility that he will face a government defeat, in which case the whole thing goes up in smoke.
It's so difficult to know what way he's going to go. At the moment, he is stubbornly still trying to make a success of the Rwanda scheme. And nobody really knows. He doesn't even know, does he, whether what he's doing at the moment will succeed. So, I mean, you said he's in the mother of all pincer movements. He can't fend off both at the same time and survive, can he?
That is his problem. I mean, I would suggest that over the weekend, telephone lines from the number 10 and its outriders are red hot, as phone calls are being made more or less pleading with backbenchers, say, look, give us a break, guys, and we can sort this a little bit further down the line, some of which might actually resonate and some of which will fall on completely deaf ears. I mean, it's sort of, remember that Brexit cost David Cameron his job and Theresa May, and Boris Johnson got through by saying, we'll get it done, we've got an oven-ready deal. Well, Rishi Sunak can't even promise that when you consider the fact that the government's own top legal eagle has said, look, the chances of actually flights taking off to Rwanda this side of the election are 50-50 at best, which to me means he doesn't think they don't think it's actually going to happen.
OK. Peter, for now, thanks very much indeed. It is a mess.
Yeah.
But I can't. Sometimes you sort of look at these things and think, well, why don't they do X, Y, or Z? With this, no idea. No. If you can't keep
he can't get enough support
happy
for nearly anything you can think of him doing. And it so is beginning to feel like a leader who just can't control his own party. And we've seen that before. And when you get that feeling,
that's when it all collapses.
It crumbles. Now, I remember Margaret Thatcher just could not, in the end, control her ministers. They were resigning, they were having affairs, they were hitting the headlines for all the wrong reasons, and it's just like she couldn't control. It happened the same with John Major.
But the issue with this is we keep saying when we have people from the Labour Party on, well, if they're likely to get into power, and it does look like that at the minute, whether you like it or not, what are they? And if the population is concerned about migration levels, what are they going to do about it? And the answer is...
Well, can they think of anything?
They haven't got a proper answer yet.
And, if they came up with any of the sort of similar-ish answers or they tried anything, you can imagine the same divisions within their parties.
Oh, yeah.
Because they are very, very strongly polarised positions in the Labour Party. And then and a lot of people wonder whether Labour could possibly get a proper majority. If they don't get a complete majority, they're going to look around for allies. Who would those allies be? And what are their thoughts on immigration?
Well, look, it'd be the Lib Dems who were even further to the left on that one.
Yeah. Or reform, if they do awfully well.
They'd never tie up with reform.
No, but exactly. So that just shows two completely different views on immigration. I can't see anyone getting to grips with immigration at the moment.
It's very difficult. If you've got any ideas, do let us know. We'll pass them on. We will pass them on. gbviews@gbnews.com.
It's 12 minutes past 6. Traditional markets across the country are struggling as footfall drops and shopping habits continue to change. But there may be hope for them on the horizon.
Yes, in Leicester, the 700-year-old market is closing ahead of an £8 million regeneration. Some traders are saying goodbye to a place they've worked all their lives.
Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has the story.
Leicester Market is in Simon's DNA. He comes from a long line of traders who've worked here for more than 100 years.
This is our store, what we've had for the last 4 or 5 generations.
The market's seen better days.
A lot of traders left. COVID killed 50% of the trade, and the place has looked really scruffy and dark and dismal for a few years now.
Supermarkets, COVID and online shopping all have played a role in pushing traditional markets to the edge.
Apples, pears, bananas, melons.
The number of traders working across Britain has fallen from 46,000 in 2009 to fewer than 32,000 now, according to the National Association of British Market Authorities. Part of the problem is an ageing workforce. Only 9% of traders are younger than 40. There's been a market in Leicester for 700 years, but now this version is becoming a part of history as the council prepares to close it ahead of a big revamp to make it fit for a new generation of shoppers. Mike is from Leicester City Council, which owns the market.
We're going to create a completely new trading environment for all the traders in here, brand new stalls, new lighting, lovely new roof with solar panels.
They're investing £8 million in renovations.
Some of the latest research around retail suggests that the future is more independent units, that people are not so keen on the larger shopping malls.
More than £100 million is being invested in markets by councils and private businesses, some of it from levelling up funding. Customers welcome the change.
I have noticed in recent years a little decline.
Obviously it's a traditional place, but like everything, it needs to be updated.
It could do with a revamp, and to make it look better would be an improvement on Leicester itself.
Closing for the last time, traders are moving to a temporary home.
You're going to come and see us, yeah? Take care. Thank you. I've seen my parents and all my grandparents all be here many years, so it'll be sad to see it getting knocked down.
A cash boost keeping the heart of British markets beating. Yet they still need customers, or that life will slowly slip away. Will Hollis, GB News in Leicester.
It's one of those conundrums, isn't it? Should we bust a gut to save our high streets, or should we just acknowledge the fact that, though we like looking at them and occasionally to visit them, especially at Christmas,
things are changing.
Things are changing, aren't they?
It's very difficult to know. Let's see if retail expert Teresa Wickham has got any ideas. Good to see you this morning, Teresa. Look, are we at a point where we need to look at changing how we view the high street and what we do with the high street?
Yes, you are, but it's quite interesting. If we can just go back to Leicester, they're doing exactly the right thing. Up till a few years ago, I was a non-executive director of Covent Garden Market, the fruit and veg market in London. And we're revamping that, but we're doing it at the same time as trying to run a market. So by Leicester moving everybody out and then refurbishing their market, they're doing the right thing. And you've only got to think of how successful Borough Market is in London. And a market is very specific sometimes to market towns, which are smaller and, you know, usually have quite a strong agricultural community around them. But for the high street now, yes, people want to come back to the high street, but there's several ingredients that are important. It's got to be easy to get to. You've got to have parking. And now people want more than just shops. They want somewhere to sit down. They want to do something there. They want to treat it more of an experience than anything else. And what people have got to realise is there's no one fix for all. The local traders, the local councils need to get together and say, what do the people within the catchment area that are likely to shop to us want? And the catchment area can actually be quite big. Because although people are shopping more online, and that's a result from COVID, it went from 7% to 33%, people still like to go in there. They like to meet their friends. They like to have something like that. But if the high street is not a welcoming place, if there's not somewhere you can grab a coffee, the big high street stores, which we always thought were what we call the anchor stores, have moved out of the high street. They're not always there. And of course, we've lost a lot of big department stores. But yes, the high street is worth saving, but it's a combination of those who run their businesses nearby and the council. So you might have a hairdresser in the high street. You know, you might have somewhere to do your nails. The thing that are growing in high streets is barbers, because more people have got beards. So it's not a question of one fix all. basic ingredients should be there, but people have to decide what their local area wants.
And it's interesting you brought up the subject of parking, because just from my own anecdotal experience, those councils that actually understand that people have cars and you need to park, if only for a short time, and make it easy for you to do so, they seem to be the most bustling high streets of all.
Yes, they will do. And if you actually look at the demographics of our population, very often during the week, it's the older couples who want to shop. You know, they might want to go in, you know, if I'm in Marks and Spencer's and look in their coffee shop, there'll be two women meeting and doing something, or it'll be couples looking round. So if you're slightly older, you need the facilities closer to you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Good buses and good parking.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. It really does.
And I think anyone watching at the moment would agree on that. But it would be lovely to hear from you, actually. Where do you live? Where have you experienced the most lively sort of high street? I'll bet you it's something to do with parking.
Yeah.
And as you said, being able to stop for a coffee with your friends. It's lovely to talk this subject. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Now, if you have just joined us, let's just remind you of the top stories at 6:19. And integrating migrants into society, impossible at current levels. That's according to Robert Jenrick, who quit as immigration minister earlier this week.
A Brexit-style divide. The parliamentary vote on the Rwanda deportation scheme threatens to rip the Tories in two, with experts comparing it to the crisis seen following the Brexit referendum.
In other news, Hollywood star Ryan O'Neal has died peacefully at the age of 82, best known for his role in the 1970 romance Love Story. His son Patrick O'Neal announced the news and said his father was a Hollywood legend, full stop.
The funeral for the Pogues frontman Shane MacGowan was held last night in Ireland, yesterday afternoon actually, paying tribute to the singer. The band's hit Christmas track Fairy Tale of New York was sung during the service. Family, friends, politicians and really well-known celebrities filled the St Mary of the Rosary Church in County Tipperary as people remembered a much-loved singer.
The US has blocked a United Nations Security Council resolution demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. Of the 15 council members, 13 voted in favour, Britain abstained, and the US used their veto.
And the royals were out in force last night as the King and Queen and the Waleses attended a carol service at Westminster Abbey last night. Prince George, Charlotte and Louis came bearing handwritten letters sending Christmas wishes to vulnerable children, which they then posted.
You know that Fairy Tale in New York? There's bad language in that.
Yes, there is. Well, there's one nasty word.
There's one nasty word.
Yeah.
I wonder if they sang that in the church.
No, I remember there was a big... Or they would have. They would have just... I think they would have done it... Yeah. I was there. I watched the whole funeral.
Oh, did you?
Oh, I wasn't going to, but I just got completely pulled in. Must be the Irish blood in me. But I just absolutely got pulled in, and everybody... You know, we said celebrities attended. I mean, Johnny Depp was there, but he wasn't there because he was a celebrity. He was there because he was a very, very firm friend. And they give wonderful eulogies, and it was just proper. And you know, some of when they played Fairy Tale of New York, members of the family and friends, they were dancing in the aisles of the church. It was proper Irish send-off. It was absolutely glorious. Loved it. Didn't know I would, but I really did. Yeah.
Nice to be surprised by a funeral.
What a send-off. What an amazing send-off it was.
It's a way to go.
There you go. It was.
Now, yellow weather warnings for wind and rain in place for large parts of the UK.
Severe weather is expected in western and central England, as well as Wales, southwest Scotland and Northern Ireland, with flood warnings expected in coming days.
Dear me, so it's not good news. Let's talk to weather journalist Nathan Rao, who's here.
Good morning.
So basically, we're going to get wet.
We are, and it is a completely different picture from when I was in here just a few days ago when it was freezing cold and very settled, apart from in Cumbria with the snow. Now we are back into that very stormy regime with the Atlantic coming at us at full throttle, with very, very wet and windy weather on the way this weekend. You mentioned there are weather warnings in place. There's quite a big wind warning for gusts of up to 70 miles per hour in place today, and that is across pretty much a large swathe of central, northern, eastern England.
It seems to be just about everywhere, doesn't it?
It's about everywhere. There's rain warnings out today as well, and tomorrow that's in the northwest and the southwest. So we are back in that picture of possibly stormy weather. Tomorrow there is another possibly deeper low-pressure system coming in from the Atlantic tomorrow later on that the Met Office are watching. So,
but at least it's not freezing.
At least it's not freezing, and a complete switch around from last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it feels milder, but then it is much, much wetter. And if you're in an area which could be subject to flooding, that's going to be a nightmare, especially just before Christmas.
Absolutely. And you mentioned flood warnings. There are actually 27 flood warnings and 149 flood alerts out from the Environment Agency. They're all on their website if you want to see where, but pretty much the whole of the country. Stick a pin in the map and you'll find a flood warning for the next few days. And you mentioned the milder temperatures as well. We are rising the temperatures about 13 degrees from only a few days ago because it's coming in from... What we had was coming down from the north, now it's coming in from the southwest, and the temperatures are rocketing back up again.
So what are we going to see over the coming days? Well, another week or so.
Are we talking a week or so or a bit further into
No, not even Christmas.
We'll talk that in a minute. That was my next question.
I was going to say, right, so this weekend is going to be very unsettled pretty much wherever you are. Now, into the start of next week, the unsettled weather will continue, but afterwards, that is the middle of next week, it's looking like it's going to be slightly more settled, but colder again. High pressure. That means colder and more settled. Low pressure letting go of us for a little while. So it's changing back and forth. So unsettled for the weekend, into the start of next week, and then a bit colder and more settled.
I know that's interesting because that's taking us sort of towards Christmas.
It is.
Any idea at all on Christmas?
Right. Now, we are 13 days away from Christmas Day.
It is.
And as we have seen, the weather is changing back and forth. We can barely keep up with it. So I've had a little bit of a look around this morning to see what I could possibly put together for Christmas Day. Now, the Met Office are suggesting something milder and more unsettled for the period that covers Christmas. Well, that doesn't really include snow, but there are other forecasting models that suggest something colder for the Christmas period. Now, for a white Christmas, you just need one snowflake of snow to fall anywhere in the UK on Christmas Day, and all you need for that is cold and a little bit of moisture. So if I was to put...
Well, we've got moisture.
We've got moisture and we've got cold. So if I was to stake my reputation on this... I would go for, I think we might just do it.
Right.
But it depends where.
But I might change my mind again.
Yeah. Well, you might well do. Nathan, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Coming up, we're going to get the latest on Farage's time in the jungle. This is GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
6:28, morning to you, watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
I want to know how to vote for Nigel.
No, it's very easy. You just download the Celebrity app.
Oh, do I have to?
Yeah, but you can delete it when you're done. You download the app, and then there's a QR code. It'll take you to it.
Well, I don't know whether I can do that.
Not from this distance,
No.
So you do that, and then you have to unlock the vote, and you have to submit your mobile number to verify your phone. But it takes 30 seconds.
All right.
But
And then
it's
you
very
get 5
easy.
free votes.
You get 5 votes.
We might as well, then.
To be fair, and I don't watch The Jungle, and I have been voting for Nigel.
Yeah, I think I want to now, because I think he's doing quite well. Shall we go down under and find out what the very latest is? Let's go to Adam Cherry in Sydney. Hi there, Adam. What's been going on, then? What's the very latest?
Good morning, guys. I'm actually on the sunny Gold Coast, where there's no such rain here. I heard your weather report earlier. I'm sorry to hear that. The big news is that Nigel is through to the final 4. The finale tomorrow night is within touching distance, but as you guys said, you have to keep voting every single day to crown him king of the jungle. Now, we're going to play you a moment from last night's show, which is already getting a lot of attention. This was the moment that Nigel met for the first time since being in the jungle, of course, almost a month. The first time he met his daughter, Izzy. Take a look at this. It's quite revealing and a nice moment.
Hello. I don't believe it. How are you, love? You all right?
Just happy to see you.
Oh, happy to see you, darling. Yeah, and you?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we had some audio difficulties there, but as you can see, it was a nice moment. They haven't seen each other they haven't seen each other in a month, so a nice, touching moment, seeing the side of Nigel that you often don't see in politics. Now, I do have to talk about another story outside of the jungle, which is getting a lot of attention. This is the Daily Mirror's front page this morning. Farage fakery row. Thinking, what could this possibly be? Well, it turns out the Farage team are using fake pictures in a desperate bid to win I'm a Celebrity votes. This is the Mirror's words. And we're going to be showing you a few of these pictures on the screen. It's a picture of Nigel on the side of the Empire State Building, which has obviously been photoshopped up, a bit of fun to encourage votes. The Mirror seem to think that this is some great conspiracy. The images are not all they seem. The posters superimposed on photos of landmarks with the help of technology. Well, I'm shocked. Who would have guessed? It turns out I know we had some drone footage earlier, so we have got a bit of a budget for this thing, but I don't think we're quite at the point of projecting Nigel's face on the Empire State Building. But there we are. Embarrassingly, people have found the original photos, showing them without the added Farage posters. I think that means they've just found a picture of the Empire State Building, of which there's more than a couple already out there. So thanks to the Daily Mirror for that expose. That's really revealing stuff. But as I say, you must keep voting every day to keep Nigel in the jungle.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Adam, thank you very much indeed.
The finale on Friday.
Yeah. And what a shocker that Nigel isn't really in the Chippendales, if you saw that picture of Nigel's with his face on the Chippendales.
Well, the Mirror is making far too much of it, but there you are. That's what they see as their job. They desperately don't want him to win.
That is just a bit of fun, actually.
Oh, yes, of course.
Stuff like that. I mean, come on.
But they desperately don't want him to win. And he's doing so well. He's now in the final 4. The final of it is tomorrow. So I don't know whether anyone else gets... Maybe one more person will be kicked out tonight.
And then it's down to 3.
It'll be down to the 3.
So who is it? We've got Josie...
Nigel... Sam and Tony.
So...
I'm just trying to register to do my vote.
Only that?
And it says, put in your age.
Really?
Yeah. And up comes one of those things that you can only go to the calendar, and it takes so long to go back to 1954 that I've given up. I mean, honestly, what silly way to do it?
Well, then they've got to check that you're not...
Yeah, that I am who I want to be.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh, well.
We'll sort you out.
I think it's quicker if you just do the QR code.
I think it probably is. Anyway, time for the sport this morning. Aidan's here. You weren't born in 1954, you were?
No, I've noticed...
Keep saying it.
Sorry,
I've noticed, though, it does take quite a long time to go back. Yeah, I know.
What are you, 1978?
77.
77?
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Baby.
Yeah, oh, baby. So what about me, 74?
Yeah, you're a baby too.
Oh, you saying I'm the youngest on this desk?
Yes, you are.
Wow.
Oh, thank you. I'm the oldest.
I knew that, but it's OK.
Yeah, I'm the middle child. Let's talk Arsenal, should we?
Yeah, we should. This is interesting because Mikel Arteta, Arsenal top of the league, great win at Luton Town on Monday. Late in the day, they got a winner from Declan Rice, but he's actually been banned from the touchline today for celebrating too vigorously. Now, it's interesting because the back page of The Sun today, you can probably see that. Oh, we've got it on screen there. Fun Police 1, Arteta 0. He's basically attacked yesterday the killjoys within football and saying, look, you know, what are you going to do? Are you going to wrap us around in a fence in the technical area so we can't celebrate? They've been criticised for it in the past. Roy Keane said, look, you know, you shouldn't be celebrating wins against Luton Town or Bournemouth or whatever. But they're quite overbearing. When they go celebrating, when they score a goal late on, they make their presence felt, put it that way. But he's basically saying, look, what are we going to do? With VAR, we're trying to take the fun out of the game. We're trying to over-technicalise the football, if that's such a word. And now, with the issue of celebration, surely the moment to celebrate a goal is when you've scored a last-minute winner at Luton Town. So,
yeah.
I mean, do you like celebrating? I mean, do you over-celebrate sometimes?
I mean, look, there's passion in the game of football, and if you get something like that, why can't you celebrate? It's ridiculous to ban it.
So he's in the director's box at Villa Park today. He's promised to be on his best behaviour. I mean, there is an etiquette in these director's box. I've been in a few myself. It's a shirt and tie usually, and smart shoes, and I don't know if he'll be able to. I don't know if he'll be able to climb over and celebrate and start fist pumping if Arsenal get a late winner at Aston Villa.
Now, who's behaving like cats? I love this.
This is good. I've got another headline for you in a moment. Yeah, so, look, Manchester City beaten by Aston Villa on Wednesday at Villa Park comprehensively, despite the fact it was only 1-0. And he's basically saying that this is their worst run since 2017. They've not won in the last 4 games. They won the treble last season, and they've been existing a little bit too much like cats. And what he means by that is people have been stroking them a bit too much, telling them how good they are, and Guardiola does not like that one bit. And so he said it's time for them to wake up out of their slumber, and the headline here, careless whiskers, which I thought there were some good ones today.
That's very good.
Feline good was another one in The Guardian, but that's very good. And so, and the subject there at the top, you can say it's a perfect storm for City.
But when they do well, why not say so?
Yeah, no, he does say that, but he's saying that sometimes people have been gushing a bit too much success too much praise on them for their success. They're in action today against Luton Town. They should win that game. And I must mention Roy Hodgson as well, because at the age of 76, he's had to apologise to his own supporters because he said they were spoilt the other night because they lost to Bournemouth, and he said we've had loads of good results over the last 5 years. He went backtracking yesterday and said that at the age of 76, I've been in football for so long, I should understand better or have a better idea how to speak to fans after games and how to suffer defeat in a better way, a more gracious way.
Oh, well, fair enough.
Can I just ask you really quickly about the Olympics, looking forward to the Paris Olympics 2024, whether Russia and Belarusian athletes will be able to take part?
Yes, they will, under a neutral flag. So I think the halfway house here is that the individual athletes who don't necessarily compete under a flag. I mean, you know, when we think of big sports stars in all sports around the world, do we necessarily think of the flag that they're representing?
No, we do in the Olympics.
Do you think so?
Oh, yes, because they stand on the podium and their national anthem.
Well, OK, well, maybe that would explain why World Athletics have come out and said, right, OK, well, you can do that in all the other sports, but you're not doing that in athletics. And that's difficult because what do you think of on the Olympics? I think athletics more than anything else. So they're not going to be able to compete in the athletics events at the Olympics.
So they have to compete individually as neutral?
In other events, but not
in athletics.
In athletics, no. Things like shot put, things like 100 metres, 800 metres, they're not going to be able to compete. So it's a little bit of a Pyrrhic victory for those athletes. But
they might win at badminton.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah,
Chinese always.
Or the pommel horse.
Is that not athletics?
No, it isn't actually. No, definitely not. I'll check.
All right, there you go.
I think it is, isn't it?
I don't know.
That's gymnastics.
Yes, I don't think that counts. Yeah, this is track. I think this is track and field.
Right. Oh, well, there you go.
To be precise.
OK, Aidan, thank you. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. Thank you very much indeed.
And we were talking weather a bit earlier. Let's get the very latest weather forecast for you from Annie Shuttleworth.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's a bit of a wet start to the weekend across the UK. And there will be further wet and windy spells throughout the weekend, but also some sunshine at times, but certainly not through this morning for many of us. There are weather warnings in force for heavy rain across southern areas of the UK, as well as Northern Ireland and southwestern Scotland, where we've already seen a lot of rain so far this week. The rain will push up to the northeast. Behind it, we'll see some sunshine developing for many western and central areas through the afternoon. Highs around 13 or 14 degrees, but the winds are going to be very strong, particularly across the coast. We could see gusts in excess of 60 miles per hour, so do take care if you are out and about along these areas. Then overnight, we'll see the rain generally clear across southern areas, so a dry, clear night for central southern areas, but some cloud will linger across many northern areas and the rain will continue to persist across parts of Aberdeenshire. With more in the way of clear spells, it will be a slightly cooler night, but still a fairly mild night considering what we've seen recently. Sunday morning, we'll see a dry spell across many central and eastern areas, so some early sunshine to be had and light winds for a time, but then another gusty and wet spell of weather pushes through the course of Sunday. It does turn drier behind it across central and western areas once again with a risk of showers, but the winds do also pick up, so despite the 13 or 14 degrees, it will still feel fairly fresh.
Well, now, coming up, and don't worry, we're not talking about the real Santa Claus.
Yeah, we're talking about pretend ones like the people you meet in department stores.
Because sometimes he needs a little... People have to stand in a little bit because he's very busy. Anyway, is there a shortage of these, what you call a professional Santa? We're talking about that in Headline Makers in just a moment.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you at 6:41. Let's just remind you of the top stories this morning. And integrating migrants into society, impossible at current levels. At least that's according to Robert Jenrick, who quit as immigration minister earlier this week.
And is it a Brexit-style divide that's happening? Apparently the parliamentary vote on the Rwanda deportation scheme threatens to rip the Tories in two, and some experts are comparing it to the crisis following the Brexit referendum.
High streets across the country struggling because of the cost of living crisis. Traders are hoping millions of pounds worth of investment will help save Britain's traditional shopping centres.
Traders left, COVID killed 50% of the trade, and the places looked really scruffy and dark and dismal for a few years now.
And in Britain's biggest stories, we're going to look back at former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's grilling during the COVID inquiry.
Do you know why your phone was missing those 5,000 odd WhatsApps?
I don't know the exact reason, but it looks as though it's something to do with the app going down and then coming up again.
It got turned off and on again.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not the most...
We all do that, don't we?
We all do that. I've lost messages on WhatsApp before, to be fair.
But I think there are ways of getting them back, aren't there?
Only if you've backed them up.
Ooh.
If they're not backed up, then
so
you
it was
just
a
lose
credible
them.
excuse, was it?
So it could be, yes, could well be. Anyway, let's go through some of the headlines this morning with author Ella Whelan and Deputy Editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers. Good morning to you both. Ella, let's start with... I mean, this is on the front of the Times, the one you've picked, but Rwanda, only the government's own team only say it's got a 50% chance of succeeding.
Well, this really is the policy that pleases no one. I mean, it seems to do all the wrong things for both sides. It's not hard enough for the generics and the Bravermans and the side of the party who want to have, either a total cut from the ECHR or a very sort of severe policy, and for the sort of Lord Camerons and One Nation side of the Conservative Party, the problem remains of whether or not it will breach international law. And essentially, when you read the Times report of it, it sounds like it comes down to a sort of Rishi Sunak crossing his fingers and saying, we have made this statement around having we're either going to ignore any injunctions from Strasbourg, but we've also made this statement that everything's fine in Rwanda, and we'll just wait and see how it goes. And that obviously isn't going to satisfy anyone. But inside the Times, they go into detail about ministers within the government and staff contradicting Rishi Sunak, really, actually. Sunak has said, this is it, you either go with this policy or we break down. This is a sort of... There's no compromise here. But then the Times is reporting that Tom Purcell, Minister for Legal Migration, says the government would be open to compromises with rebel Conservative MPs, despite the Prime Minister saying that this is its only approach. So, I mean... In terms of breaking apart, it is quite... I think it is similar to Brexit, because what this fundamentally is about is control. Whatever your views on migration and numbers and small boats and all the rest of it, it comes down to who has the last say on government policy. And that's a very big deal.
The funny thing is, it may even be Rwanda that has the last say.
Well, it sounds like it.
There are rumours that Rwanda is saying, we've had enough of this. And they may well back out of everything.
Or that Rwanda is wagging the finger saying, don't you break international law, which is remarkable.
And has managed to string extraordinary amounts of money out of the UK government. I mean, I don't like to say anything good about Rwanda's dictator, but he's clearly a successful negotiator in getting money out of us. I mean, this thing, it's just become almost totemic in the Tory party. For those on the right, you have to support the Rwanda scheme to show that you're tough on migration. But people have stopped even worrying about whether it's actually a good idea, because it seems as if, even if it does go ahead, they'll probably only send a few hundred people it's
the deterrent.
It's the deterrent,
aspect.
I mean, obviously that remains to be seen. I mean, it's people who are crossing the English Channel. They're risking their lives doing that. I think death is a pretty big deterrent. I mean, they have a different set of... they're deterred by different things than you or I are. Let's put it that way. But it seems as if it could still be scuppered in the courts. So much potential for it to go wrong. You'd think that they should have chosen a different strategy a long time ago, I think, on this.
Yeah, they obviously feel they're in too far already. Talking about people who are in too far already, Nigel Farage is doing very well in the jungle. He's down to the final 4. We haven't watched it.
No.
Did you watch it?
No.
I watch clips on social media.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I only watch clips on GB.
It's only because I go to bed.
But I think there'll be a vote tonight.
Yes.
And then it'll be down to the final 3 tomorrow.
Yeah, and there's also this the final Bush Tucker trial, the celebrity cyclone that fans of I'm a Celeb get very excited about, where people dress up as superheroes and have to walk up a water slide while they have objects pelted at them. Nigel might be exempt on health grounds, though, so we
because of his bad back.
Yeah, so we might not see him take part in that trial, even if he does do well. But it's interesting. I mean, a lot of people think that... people will remember Matt Hancock doing well last year. There's this assumption that the public just despises all politicians. We want to see them humiliated. They're evil human beings. But actually, sometimes when they get to show the other side to them, their personality, people warm to them. I mean, also following the conversation about I'm a Celeb on Twitter is hilarious, because people seem to think that, just because Nigel Farage is on there eating kangaroo anus or something, that it's going to be we're being brainwashed into sharing his beliefs about Brexit or immigration or something like that.
The bottom line is, it's whether people like you or not, and what people have never understood in this country, or the political elite and the media elite have never understood in this country, is that people quite like Nigel.
Yeah, and he is actually, you know, his views on things are quite normal. You know.
Well, the other thing is, don't you think the way we perceive politicians is very two-dimensional? It's what they say and tiny little sound bites of something. But actually, most of those are characters, and they've got 3 dimensions at least.
Yes, but I mean, I don't really care about politicians' personalities or their private lives or what relationship they have with their daughter or anything like this. I just want them to implement the policies I want them to implement.
Well, yes,
you know, but I think that the nice thing about, from the clips I've watched of I'm a Celebrity this year, they are quite a sort of... They're a nice bunch that are left in the semi-finals. Sam and Tony and Josie and Nigel. And there's... Actually, I watched a clip of them discussing Brexit a few days ago. And it was the kind of model discussion that you might want to have happen anywhere, which was, it was nuanced, it was open, it was honest. And I think that kind of thing, if, you know, whatever about Nigel's career and whatever about his popularity, but I'm quite pleased that those kind of discussions are being had on a popular television show. And if that's all that he's succeeded in, I think it's quite significant.
Yeah. No, I think it's a fair point. Proper discussions, sensible discussions.
The fact that he's in the final weekend is quite something, isn't it? He'll be ticking that off as a success.
Oh, yeah,
definitely.
sure.
Yeah.
Ella, let's have a look at Christmas, should we? This I don't quite understand. That Britain's wanting to escape the cost of living gloom,
yes,
are spending even more money by going abroad.
Yes, well,
Those people who've got cash in the first place.
Yes, and I mean, this is down to... the important thing to note is that this is down to holiday experts, so it's your kind of...
I see.
It's Thomas Cook and all the rest of them saying that it's... believe us, people really want to leave. But there is a sort of trend for, I think, the more... maybe it's the pandemic effect, but people are more likely to ditch the sort of family at home, stock up the fridge and... you know, hunker down with pigs in blankets for 4 days in the UK, and more likely to take the opportunity to go abroad. So there's lots more people going to Alicante or wherever to get a bit of sun. Obviously, I think the interesting thing to note is that the sort of years of travel chaos that have happened time and time again don't seem to have put people off. And I suppose it just goes to show how important family holidays are. Although I can never get behind the idea that you would be in a swimsuit on Christmas. It just doesn't feel right to me.
I'm with you. I can't be doing with the going away at Christmas. I can't even be doing with the going out for Christmas dinner. A lot of people do that,
don't they? They book up the hotels.
I tell you what I don't like about that one, and it's the tremendous sense of guilt I would feel about being served by people who are working on Christmas Day.
But you may be being served by people who need the money and love their job, but also don't really particularly respect Christmas for religious reasons or whatever. So it isn't important to them.
But I'm just not comfortable with it.
Yeah,
I hope they're being paid double, triple overtime for it at the very least.
I wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just me. Maybe you're going to let us know if you're going out for Christmas.
Are you going to be on television on Christmas Day? See, that's working on Christmas Day, isn't it?
Well, there's lots of people who... I remember years and years and years ago, I worked as a cook in a care home and I did the Christmas shift, and it was wonderful. And then at the end of the shift, it was in Brighton, and my parents drove all the way up from East London to Brighton and picked me up with a little... Christmas dinner in a foil, and it was the best Christmas I ever had.
You remember that?
Yeah.
But you see, working in a care home slightly, you sort of feel like you're doing some good, rather than just feeding people who can afford to go out on Christmas Day. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and people who can afford to go to Spain, the Caribbean. Well, Spain's not that expensive, I guess, but the Caribbean. I mean, don't go to the US on Christmas, I suppose, is the advice I'd give, because they don't do Christmas dinner. A lot of people, Brits seem to forget that.
Don't they?
They've had their turkey. They've had their turkey on Thanksgiving.
So you're not going to get Christmas.
So what do they do on Christmas for food on Christmas?
Well, they get takeout or whatever they do.
Do they?
Yeah. That's disgusting, isn't it? It's awful.
So wrong. So I knew there was something.
No, but they've really done it on Thanksgiving, haven't they?
Yeah, so they've already done their turkey day.
Yeah, and everything.
Talking of the United States, Fraser, they've vetoed this call for a UN call for a Gaza ceasefire.
Yeah, so the United Arab Emirates have called for a ceasefire. It's gone to the Security Council. The US has vetoed it. The UK abstained. It's quite significant seeing...
Can I just say, would we have abstained because we knew the US was going to veto it?
That's what I was wondering.
Because it seems a bit lily-livered from us.
Yeah, I'd say so.
It's a bit cowardly of us to just abstain.
I think I don't know how much this has to do with, you know, Lord Cameron's position, as he seems to be less, I don't know, less certain on this question. He takes a more balanced view than some people on the Israel-Palestine issue. I'm not entirely sure where our positions comes from, but I think, you know, I agree with the US position, essentially, a call for a ceasefire. Really, it's a call on Israel to stop fighting.
Yeah.
It's not a call on... You know, there was a negotiated ceasefire not that long ago, and it was broken by Hamas, and it could have carried on had Hamas returned more hostages. But they decided they don't want to return those hostages, and it's believed for some of the worst possible reasons, because of some of the things that might have happened to those women that, you know, I don't really want to go into too much detail there.
We get the sort of...
the gist.
The nagging worries, the doubts that seem to be coming true.
It's not. I think people need to be honest that it's not a ceasefire; it's a surrender that they're calling for.
Yes.
And
why don't they say that? Why don't more people say that?
I think that would, you know, that would then expose the position.
Isn't the true term, is it?
No.
They're calling for.
Well, it's also just. I mean, this has been the annoying is a very weak word to use, but it's sort of frustrating, annoying. The point all the way through is that people who, you know, have a different position, you know, perhaps on the pro-Palestine side, are unwilling to differentiate their pro-Palestinian self-determination position from a pro-Hamas position. And just the cowardice of being able to say Hamas has never been interested in a ceasefire. In fact, the absolute opposite. So this is just a nonsense. You're creating a fiction by saying that the ceasefire could take place.
And also, it's important to recognise that this war has now gone slightly beyond Gaza as well. So, you know, Israel is fighting also at the border with Lebanon. We recently had attacks on ships by the Houthis from Yemen, you know, various... Usually, actually, it's mainly Iran-backed groups attacking Israel on various fronts. Again, is there a call for those groups to lay down their weapons to stop fighting Israel? Certainly not as forceful as the calls that are being directed at Israel.
Yeah. Let's just finish off, because we've only got 30 seconds. There's this carol service, the Royal Carol Service last night. Have we got pictures?
Yeah,
have we got a paper to bring up with lovely pictures? I mean, it's on all of them. There's the Times.
Yeah, and there's the Mail.
Oh, there's some vision. We've got vision.
Pictures.
I mean, look at that. It looks absolutely magical.
Well, and I'm sure the music was wonderful, but really it's young Louis who has stolen the show once again with his cheeky behaviour, trying to blow out his sister and...
Yeah, I just think that's really lovely to see. We'll show you more of those pictures a little bit later on. In the meantime, Ella, Fraser, thank you very much indeed. Let's go and check on the weather with Annie.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's a bit of a wet start to the weekend across the UK. And there will be further wet and windy spells throughout the weekend, but also some sunshine at times, but certainly not through this morning for many of us. There are weather warnings in force for heavy rain across southern areas of the UK, as well as Northern Ireland and southwestern Scotland, where we've already seen a lot of rain so far this week. The rain will push up to the northeast, with behind it we'll see some sunshine developing for many western and central areas through the afternoon. Highs around 13 or 14 degrees, but the winds are going to be very strong. Particularly across the coast, we could see gusts in excess of 60 miles per hour, so do take care if you are out and about along these areas. Then overnight, we'll see the rain generally clear across southern areas, so a dry, clear night for central southern areas, but some cloud will linger across many northern areas, and the rain will continue to persist across parts of Aberdeenshire. With more in the way of clear spells, it will be a slightly cooler night, but still a fairly mild night considering what we've seen recently. Sunday morning, we'll see a dry spell across many central and eastern areas, so some early sunshine to be had and light winds for a time, but then another gusty and wet spell of weather pushes through the course of Sunday. It does turn drier behind it across central and western areas once again, with a risk of showers, but the winds do also pick up, so despite the 13 or 14 degrees, it will still feel fairly fresh.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It is 7 o'clock on Saturday, the 9th of December. Today, integrating migrants into society is impossible at current levels, and that's according to Robert Jenrick, who quit as immigration minister early this week.
And is it all a Brexit-style divide? The parliamentary vote on the Rwanda deportation scheme threatens to rip the Tories in two, and some experts are comparing it to the crisis following the Brexit referendum.
As high streets across the country are struggling with the cost of living crisis, traders hope that millions of pounds worth of investment will help to save Britain's traditional shopping centres. Our reporter spoke to some of those affected.
Traders left, COVID killed 50% of the trade, and the place has looked really scruffy and dark and dismal for a few years now.
And later on this morning, in Britain's biggest stories, we're going to be looking back at how Boris Johnson got on during the COVID inquiry.
Do you know why your phone was missing those 5,000 odd WhatsApps?
I don't know the exact reason, but it looks as though it's something to do with the app going down and then coming up again.
And with yellow weather warnings on the way, Annie Shuttleworth has the forecast today.
There are rain and wind warnings in force across the UK this weekend, but there are some chances of some fine weather. You can find out where and when with me a little bit later on.
Right, and Aidan's here with the sport.
Yes, indeed. In golf, Rory McIlroy has his say over John Rahm's controversial defection to the Live Tour. And in football, Jadon Sancho is told to apologise to Erik ten Hag if he wants to play for Manchester United again.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ann Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Now, how are you getting on with your Christmas shopping? Because who was it saying about 30? Oh, no, was it Nathan? 13 days until Christmas.
I can't believe that. That
can't be right.
It's not long enough. I'm not organised yet at all.
That can't be. No, 16 days.
The decorations
16 days it must be.
Yeah.
Now, all the decks are up and things, but I haven't really done any Christmas shopping yet.
Me.
I'm very disorganised
13 days
this year.
isn't long enough, is it? Oh, dear.
I'm short of ideas.
Yeah.
This is
in
the
that
trouble.
case... It's silly to spend money just for the sake of it, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. I know what we're getting each other.
I was told about theatre vouchers yesterday.
Oh, theatre vouchers.
Just in case you're a theatre-going family. I don't know why I said it like that. But
No, we have
but
to be a bit
apparently-
posh.
Yeah, you can, just like you can get book tokens, you can get theatre vouchers.
Does it have to be for a specific theatre?
Exactly, no.
Oh.
Isn't that, you see, that could be quite cool because a lot of people like to go out for a show sometimes, but one of the first things you think is it's so expensive, and it is in some theatres. But I just thought, theatre voucher, that's interesting.
Yeah. I'm not a theatre goer.
No, my
to be fair.
lads are. They like going out to a show or something.
Do they? Well, they're very sophisticated, your lads.
Oh,
aren't they?
terribly, absolutely.
Yeah, but we're getting.
I brung them up that way.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
We're buying a tent for Christmas for each other. We're sort of, just we said, well, get a tent for Christmas because we're going camping next year.
Ooh, what, proper camping?
Yeah, just wild camping.
Mucking about camping.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, one of my sons is very much into that. Not glamping, but proper.
The proper camping, 2-man tent and all that sort of thing, and just
okay.
pitching it up and
I tell you what,
cold and mucky. Be brilliant.
I don't get the attraction of that, but there you are if you're into it. I was talking about Shane McGowan's funeral.
Oh, yeah.
Which I ended up watching the whole thing of yesterday. And it was just wonderful. It was what you call a brilliant send-off. Proper wake, I suppose, because in the end, friends and family were actually dancing in the aisles of the church when they started playing Fairy Tale of New York. And although people were upset, they were joyful as well, and wonderful eulogies. And it's just that Sharon was listening to me talk about that a bit earlier. Hi, Sharon. Good morning, Stephen and Anne. She says, at my dad's funeral, we played In the Mood by Glenn Miller, and all my dad's friends got up and started dancing. It was brilliant and brought back great memories. A funeral, if it's done well, and of course, if it's not a terrible tragedy that somebody has died, can be a very uplifting experience, actually.
I'm all for this not wearing black and all that sort of thing and just having a fun time. Nice memories. So if it's a tragic circumstance, it's different.
Oh, of course.
But if
it's a life well lived,
yeah.
And in Shane McGowan's case, yes, he was only 65, but as his widow,
it's well lived, all right.
Oh yeah, his widow said, we thought we'd lost him many times in his life because he was hovering on the edge. His life was about taking it to the very edge all the time. But both she and his sister gave the most wonderful eulogies, and you thought, what a lovely family they were. Anyway, if you've got any wonderful memories of good send-offs, love to hear from you.
Yes.
gbviews@gbnews.com.
Now, Robert Jenrick, who was, up until very recently, the immigration minister, has written a damning article warning that Conservatives face red-hot fury from voters over the handling of the migration crisis.
Yeah, he's writing today in The Telegraph, and the once close Sunak ally says that allowing historically unprecedented levels of migration is the best example of what he called a failed Westminster consensus. And he warned that centre-right parties across Europe will be punished at the ballot box if they don't handle the issue.
Well, he also says it's impossible to have integration when you let in, this is to quote him, 1.2 million new people, as we've done over the last 2 years.
So setting out his plans to tackle the crisis, the now ex-immigration minister says GP services and hospitals do not grow on trees.
Well, the spiralling crisis, of course, includes the Rwanda scheme that the government's own advice says only has a 50% chance of working, and that in itself could apparently split the Conservatives as seriously as Brexit.
Yeah, and like Brexit, the divide is causing voters to look for alternatives, with the insurgent Reform UK now regularly polling above 10%, and that surely is nipping away at the Tories' heels.
Well, earlier we spoke to political correspondent Peter Spencer.
It calls to mind, to my mind at least, the plight of the ancient Greek hero Odysseus when he was confronted with a man-eating monster that threatened to eat half his crew, or a whirlpool which would sink his ship. Now, it is to be noted that he did finally make it back to Ithaca, but when he did, he was on his Todd. Rishi Sunak's situation, it's impossible to overstate the situation, the difficulty that Rishi Sunak is in, because there is something like 100 of his own backbench MPs who are really, really concerned about the Rwanda deal and the potential for it breaking human rights laws. Basically, in their view, it goes much too far. At the same time, there's something like the same number on the right of the party who say it doesn't go far enough. Now, come Tuesday, there will be the second reading, or it's scheduled the second reading of the emergency legislation supposed to fix it all. And the normal deal is that you don't actually get a government defeat at second reading stage. It comes later when you chip away at the edges. However, it would only take 29 Tory MPs to actually vote against this legislation for it to fall. Now, when you've got these disparate elements all over the place, it is within the bounds of possibility that he will face a government defeat, in which case the whole thing goes up in smoke.
It's so difficult to know what way he's going to go. At the moment, he is stubbornly still trying to make a success of the Rwanda scheme. And nobody really knows. He doesn't even know, does he, whether what he's doing at the moment will succeed. So, I mean, you said he's in the mother of all pincer movements. He can't fend off both at the same time and survive, can he?
That is his problem. I mean, I would suggest that over the weekend, telephone lines from the number 10 and its outriders are red hot, as phone calls are being made more or less pleading with backbenchers, say, look, give us a break, guys, and we can sort this a little bit further down the line, some of which might actually resonate and some of which will fall on completely deaf ears. I mean, it's sort of, remember that Brexit cost David Cameron his job and Theresa May, and Boris Johnson got through by saying, we'll get it done, we've got an oven-ready deal. Well, Rishi Sunak can't even promise that when you consider the fact that the government's own top legal eagle has said, look, the chances of actually flights taking off to Rwanda this side of the election are 50-50 at best.
Interesting, isn't it? What
isn't
would
it
he do?
just?
What can he do? How would you advise him if you were a SPAD? Love to hear your view. What can Rishi do now to save himself and face?
It's just so interesting that he really is stuck between a rock and a hard place. Half the party thinks he's not going far enough, half the party thinks he's going too far. Yeah. So what do you do for a policy that may or may not have a significant impact when it actually happens, or if it happens? I don't know.
And the funny, I was going to say the funny thing, it's not, but the strange thing is that because he's made it such an issue, one of his 5 pledges, it sort of comes down to a plane sitting on the tarmac, doesn't it? Not taking off. And the fact that more Home Secretaries have been to Rwanda recently than any migrants. So it's something that can be calculated. So he couldn't even argue that it's working if the plane never takes off with anyone on it.
It's very odd. Anyway, let us know what you think about that one. Now, in towns and cities right across our great country, traditional markets are struggling. Footfall is dropping, and we know shopping habits are changing.
But there may be hope on the horizon, because some traders are benefiting from tens of millions of pounds worth of investment.
Well, in Leicester, the 700-year-old market is closing ahead of an £8 million regeneration. Some traders are saying goodbye to a place they've worked all their lives.
Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has the story.
Leicester Market is in Simon's DNA. He comes from a long line of traders who've worked here for more than 100 years.
Here's our store, this is our store, what we've had for the last 4 or 5 generations.
The market's seen better days.
A lot of traders left. COVID killed 50% of the trade, and the place has looked really scruffy and dark and dismal for a few years now.
Supermarkets, COVID and online shopping all have played a role in pushing traditional markets to the edge.
Apples, pears, bananas, melons.
The number of traders working across Britain has fallen from 46,000 in 2009 to fewer than 32,000 now, according to the National Association of British Market Authorities. Part of the problem is an ageing workforce. Only 9% of traders are younger than 40. There's been a market in Leicester for 700 years, but now this version is becoming a part of history as the council prepares to close it ahead of a big revamp to make it fit for a new generation of shoppers. Mike is from Leicester City Council, which owns the market.
We're going to create a completely new trading environment for all the traders in here, brand new stalls, new lighting, lovely new roof with solar panels.
They're investing £8 million in renovations.
Some of the latest research around retail suggests that the future is more independent units, that people are not so keen on the larger shopping malls.
More than £100 million is being invested in markets by councils and private businesses, some of it from levelling up funding. Customers welcome the change.
I have noticed in recent years a little decline.
Obviously it's a traditional place, but like everything, it needs to be updated.
It could do with a revamp, and to make it look better would be an improvement on Leicester itself.
Closing for the last time, traders are moving to a temporary home.
You're going to come and see us, yeah? Take care. Thank you. I've seen my parents and all my grandparents all be here many years, so it'll be sad to see it go knocked down.
A cash boost keeping the heart of British markets beating. Yet they still need customers, or that life will slowly slip away. Will Hollis, GB News in Leicester.
Loads of you getting in touch.
Absolutely.
On this. Some people doing all right. Brianna, morning to you, says, we live in a seaside town in South Wales and our high street still has a butcher, a baker's and possibly a candlestick maker's and all the little shops we love. It's always busy, summer and winter. And yes, we have some excellent parking nearby.
You see, that comes up time and again. Viveka, that's an interesting name. Lovely. Well, our little town, Bampton, in the foothills of Exmoor. It sounds lovely already. It's really wonderful, she says. We have double parking and a voluntary car park. A voluntary pay car park, 50p. We have all the shops you could wish for, greengrocer, butcher, game butcher, bakery, deli and lovely cafes and a very good tea room.
See a tea room. Does it for me every time.
And a voluntary pay car park. I find that fascinating.
I wonder how many people actually pay. 50p, well, that's not bad. You can't argue with that. Charles from Wingerworth.
Wingerworth?
Oh, we're going to have to look that up, Charles.
I'll look it up.
Says to solve the lack of footfall in the high street, relatively easy. Local councils need to provide adequate and free parking.
Yes.
In so many town centres, it's just so expensive. I suppose the argument would be that they would lose, councils would lose money, wouldn't it? And even though the local economy would improve. So would they make that money back because the economy's doing better?
Wingerworth, by the way, is a large village and parish in North East Derbyshire.
Well, there you go.
Lovely to know. 15 miles from Sheffield.
Oh, there you go. Oh,
it's
sounds
interesting
lovely, actually.
that thing about, parking and who charges for the parking. Because Greg says, I live in Chichester, a city and once a huge market town. Sadly, due to greed from the cathedral, Greg says, because they own most of the buildings, shops have shut and the outdoor market has dropped. Increases in rents has ruined the whole city. The council don't seem interested in trying to improve it and seem to rely just on tourism.
Oh, well.
It's looking upon the parking as a way of making money for the council that seems to be ruining things.
Yeah, you've got to make money for the community, haven't you? Anyway, keep your thoughts coming through on that one, gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, this year's Christmas festivities could be impacted by, believe it or not, potato and vegetable shortages.
Well, farmers have been warning GB News that rising energy bills and wet weather is causing delays in producing crops.
Well, Europe's infamous drought in 2022 made matters worse because that created smaller yields.
Our Northern Ireland reporter spent time with a potato farmer in County Down to find out just how bad things are.
Out of our 65 acres that we have in this year, we have two fields there that are completely lost of about 13 acres. And then we have an existing 12 acres on top of that to dig.
Paul Hamilton is a farmer, and like many others, he's fighting with the extremes in costs and the weather.
The potato market works off supply and demand for the free market stuff. So We're relying on a dry spell of weather here before we can get some more lifted to sell for Christmas time. So with less potatoes available and more potatoes lost, it's going to really feel its effect when it comes into February and March time.
This field is round about 6.5 acres. Input costs of £23,000. The majority of that will have to be absorbed by the farm. But with lack of product, the price of goods will surely rise.
It's similar in Scotland, around the Forfar area, Angus area. England as well, they're further behind with their harvest, Lincolnshire and Norfolk, which is very unusual. Usually they would be finished up by this time of year, and some of them are still plundering on to try and get what they can rescue from the crop out of the ground.
Last year's higher input costs will continue to push up retail prices, and with higher interest rates, growers may cut back on next year's planting.
The energy cost has had a massive impact on us. This season here is a very difficult season weather-wise, but we're following off the back of last season, which was very difficult with massive diesel prices and fertiliser prices and the energy used to make fertiliser. So last year was our highest growing cost we'd ever seen. Following then into this season here, planting and harvesting, diesel's up again, and then that's fallen on to a lot of people are selling their potatoes straight off the field because it's too expensive to run the refrigeration because of the electric costs. So that is why we're finding spud prices are quite stable at the minute. People are just offloading everything they're digging, but that's what it's going to feel an absolute effect when it comes to February and March, because nobody will have any in refrigeration, what it takes to keep them to that time of year.
Dougie Beattie, GB News, County Down.
Well, it's interesting because that's the situation in Ireland, but we are told that it is all over the UK at the moment. So let's speak to a farmer, and we're joined by one right now, Colin Rayner. And a very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Is that the case? Is this potato and root vegetable shortage happening everywhere?
We have had dreadful weather for 12 months. We had a very dry January and February. We had a very wet March and April and May. We managed to get some of our crops in, and then we had scorching hot weather in May, June and July. And then when we went to harvest our crops, we've had awful weather. And the biggest issue is that there's still a lot of the crops in the ground in the UK, so there could be shortages. The farmers won't get paid any more money because we've all signed contracts and to various suppliers, so that we're not going to benefit from any price rises.
It's a lose-lose situation, is it? Lose for you, lose for us.
Yes, my biggest fear is not worrying about how much the customer's going to have to pay for their potatoes and vegetables if it is available, because this weather is throughout Europe, so we're not the only people affected. And the horror stories that I see on Twitter from my fellow farmers, where they've got 6 or 7 tractors trying to pull the potato harvester, and they end up with the 6 tractors stuck and the potato harvester stuck. But also on top of that, we have a government of all parties, are hell-bent on paying me more money to grow wildflowers and vegetables and potatoes and corn and wheat. So next year, thousands and thousands of hectares will be taken out of food production to grow wildflower. Because at the moment, the amount of money they're going to pay every farm in this country to grow wildflowers is more than what we get for growing a crop of potatoes or cabbages or vegetables or wheat. And my fear is that the government seems to be hell-bent on us not producing food in the UK.
Does it come down to politicians not really understanding or knowing that they need to support farming?
I think you have to feed people first, and that's the most important thing. But they seem to be blaming farmers for all the ills of climate change. We've been on the same farm since 1551. When we came here in 1551, there wasn't Heathrow Airport, there wasn't Slough, there wasn't the M4, there wasn't railway lines. But let's blame the farmers and their cows for all the climate change. So my fear is, at the end of 2024, we might wake up with empty supermarket shelves, because as a farmer, they're going to pay me £735 a hectare not to grow food. And that I don't have to do a lot for that. And that's a lot less risky than growing a crop of wheat or putting a crop of potatoes in the ground. And also with the weather I've been farming now for over 45 years, the weather has changed. It's more extreme. The seasons have changed. Everything has changed. And we had our worst harvest of wheat and barley and oilseed rape in 25 years this year. And that is mirrored across the countryside.
OK, Colin, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. It is a worry. We need food security in this country.
And we've said it, so why aren't we putting money where the mouth is? Very important as well. And it's funny, one of the points I was going to put to Colin...
Oh, sorry.
No,
put you off
but
then.
he already answered it in a way.
Right.
Because I was going to say, well, we've always had bad weather in Britain. I mean, it's, it's been there forever. But he has been farming at that farm, at that point, since 1551, did he say? And when he says the weather is getting worse, it's more difficult to farm, he knows because he's got the historical perspective on that. So it's not good enough to just say, well, we're used to a bit of rain in this country. He's saying the weather is more extreme than it used to be. And is obviously therefore making it more difficult to farm. And he should know.
But what do we do then about food in this country? How do we adapt farming so that we can have food security?
Well, you listen to people like him.
Well, yeah.
Don't you?
Oh,
and I understand about the wildflowers.
Maybe it's more polytunnels and all that sort of thing we need. Yeah, I get the rewilding thing. I think
totally
it's
brilliant, rewilding, but not at the expense of food security.
No. Surely we can do a bit of both. Rewild areas that
can't be farmed. Yeah, corners and places, hedgerows. I mean, there was a huge campaign, wasn't there, a few centuries ago, I remember, sorry, a few decades ago, I remember, to bring back hedgerows because we were getting rid of hedgerows and putting up wire fencing instead. And then campaigners pointed out that you need hedgerows for all sorts of reasons, farming reasons and wildlife reasons. And there was a huge campaign to bring back hedgerows, which I think has been very successful.
Well, it has, but you see, there's a problem. We're losing a lot of traditional skills because what people do now, like the hedge trimmers that you see going along, very bad for hedges.
Are they?
Hedges need to be laid. You've got to lay a hedge, which is intensive work.
Is that where you fold it over?
So you fold it over. Otherwise, hedges become hollow.
Yes,
so you literally have to cut and fold, and it just it's hard work laying a hedge.
It's wonderful work, though, isn't it? When you've seen it done properly, it looks fabulous.
But it's things like that. It's like old-fashioned stuff. We need to get back to it. Anyway, let us know what you think on that one. It's a tricky one. We can't carry on as we're doing. It's ridiculous. On the Tory infighting, because we've been talking a lot about that today, Jim's, and it's not a bad idea from Jim, he says any MP who's not happy with their current party should join Reform and cross the floor. Well, actually, why not?
I think you've got to vote with your feet now, haven't you?
I think now's
the time.
Look, if you're not happy with what your party's doing, join a party that you are happy with, and then there's a general election not that far off, and then you'll find out if
things up a bit.
You find out if your constituents approve of what you did or not. It's a risk, but it's a risk whatever you do.
Pensioner Eric says, "Good morning, both. The answer: if you're young and you have skills, leave. Too late for me." That's very negative.
That is very negative, though. Yeah, don't like that. Anyway, let's see what the weather's going to do for you today. Here's Annie.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's a bit of a wet start to the weekend across the UK. And there will be further wet and windy spells throughout the weekend, but also some sunshine at times, but certainly not through this morning for many of us. There are weather warnings in force for heavy rain across southern areas of the UK, as well as Northern Ireland and southwestern Scotland, where we've already seen a lot of rain so far this week. The rain will push up to the northeast. Behind it, we'll see some sunshine developing for many western and central areas through the afternoon. Highs around 13 or 14 degrees, but the winds are going to be very strong. Particularly across the coast, we could see gusts in excess of 60 miles per hour. So do take care if you are out and about along these areas. Then overnight, we'll see the rain generally clear across southern areas, so a dry, clear night for central southern areas, but some cloud will linger across many northern areas, and the rain will continue to persist across parts of Aberdeenshire. With more in the way of clear spells, it will be a slightly cooler night, but still a fairly mild night considering what we've seen recently. Sunday morning we'll see a dry spell across many central and eastern areas, so some early sunshine to be had and light winds for a time, but then another gusty and wet spell of weather pushes through the course of Sunday. It does turn drier behind it across central and western areas once again, with a risk of showers, but the winds do also pick up, so despite the 13 or 14 degrees it will still feel fairly fresh.
Grim, frankly. There you go. Don't go anywhere. Aidan McGee's got all your sport in just a moment.
Who is it?
We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
"7:31 morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Now, as the festive season approaches, it's important to remember that Christmas can be a lonely time for many because they're probably thinking about loved ones and, sadly, loved ones who are no longer with us. There's a charity called At a Loss, and it's recently relaunched its films and discussion group called the Bereavement Journey programme for churches to run to help people who've been bereaved in all sorts of circumstances within the community.
I lost my son, Addy, 25 years ago now. He was only three and a half. He died of viral myocarditis.
My brother and my father died in Hong Kong during the pandemic.
I have had multiple bereavements. I lost my mum to alcoholism, my dad later on, my sister to suicide, and my husband suddenly.
Well, let's talk to the founder, Yvonne Richmond-Tulloch, who joins us now. It's really good to see you this morning. What I find fascinating about that little clip that we showed, Yvonne, is that we're talking about people losing people in all different circumstances, and actually, in some cases, a long time ago, but still that process of bereavement, I guess, never ends.
Yes, that's absolutely right. I think we've had in our country many years, haven't we, of not really understanding death and grief. And sorry, there's a bit of an echo on the sound here. I'll keep going. And so what we don't tend to appreciate is the extent to which death is impacting us in so many ways. And what it tends to do is it impacts us physically, financially, practically, relationally, in all manner of ways. And it goes on for many, many years.
It's interesting, isn't it, that even if that death was a long time ago, or even if it's very acutely been, we seem to have lost her clearly there. We might try and sort out your microphone. I don't know if you can still hear us, but what you need to do is probably not have the programme on your computer.
Is she back?
Just be there yourself. Yeah, but it's always at Christmas. Can I tell you something? You know the carol concert that the Royals were at yesterday? They were, of course, this is Christmas. There was a performance on a piano there, a piano that used to belong to John Lennon, on which he wrote Imagine. And guess who'd bought it?
Ooh.
And then his trust now lent it back, so which is why it was there yesterday. George Michael. George Michael bought John Lennon's piano, and of course it was loaned to by George Michael's estate for this thing yesterday. And we forget actually that George Michael is somebody we miss and mourn. He died on Christmas Day.
He did.
Remember?
Yeah.
In 2016.
Is it that long ago?
So there's always people you remember around, isn't there? And that's what I wanted to put to Yvonne. I think we've got you back. Yes. Is that even if it's a long time ago, or even if it was just last week, in Shane McGowan, Christmas seems to make it very difficult.
It does indeed. At this time of year, all those family gatherings and the Christmas celebrations, they remind us, don't they, of people we have lost. Even if we weren't bereaved this year, and obviously for people bereaved this year, the feelings are going to be so much more intense. But they remind us of people who we've lost many years ago. And the thing about our bereavement journey programme is it's helping people to go back to bereavements from years before, as well as deal with grief for now. And it's taking the country by storm, because we haven't been very good at dealing with grief and dealing with death. And
forgive me, Yvonne. Forgive me for interrupting. Why is it that we are so bad in this country at dealing with death? Because there is only one thing certain in life, and that is that at some point, we're all going to die.
Yes, we've been talking about death denial for quite some while now. People think it goes back to the Second World War, that when there was so much death, that we wanted, as a country, just to sort of put death behind us and to move on. We've also progressed materially and obviously with our medical science, and we've almost kidded ourselves that it's not going to happen to us. And people have died in hospices and in hospitals, and we haven't experienced the body. We haven't sort of had direct personal experience necessarily of death until it hits us. And as a society, in communities, we've lost the art of doing death well and of talking about it and passing on to each other how we support somebody who's dying, how we support relatives after they've died. And it all comes as a bit of a shock when it happens. And it's impacting more now than ever it would have done because of that lack of understanding.
Sadly, Yvonne, we've got to leave it there. I could talk to you for hours about
it's
this.
Such a big subject, and most people have some sort of investment in it, don't they? And we should be talking about it much more. It's great to see you. Thank you. If I just point anyone, if you are able to get online, it's called At A Loss, all one word, ataloss.org. Very easy to go to their website. Yeah, and if you go to their website, it's got all sorts of things you might be interested in. There.
Yeah, and I tell you what's important as well is you often get people who say, I don't know what to say to someone if they've lost someone, and they avoid it a little bit. Don't avoid it.
No, don't.
Just go and say you're sorry.
I'm thinking of you.
You don't have to say anything more than that.
Never
avoid it.
Fancy about it.
Yeah.
Just know I'm thinking of you. Are you OK?
Aidan's nodding away because you've had significant loss in your life, Aidan, haven't you?
I did. It was interesting there about the bereavement process because I lost my dad in January 2021 and left a huge void in my life because I was caring for him every day and I had done for 4 years. He had severe Alzheimer's and I decided to go for bereavement counselling organised by a guy called Michael from my previous employers, and it was a group thing on a team session. I thought it'd be good for me, and I saw everyone's faces on there and I couldn't believe. I thought everyone's bereavement would have been from the last month, like mine, but some of them were...
Years ago?
Years and years ago, years. Just like the gentleman we interviewed, or that was interviewed in the park just then. But it really did me good.
Yeah, me too. I've been to a bereavement counsellor when the worst happened to me, and they were brilliant. Yeah. And I remember going and thinking, what on earth good can talking about it do? Because it's not going to be able to reverse the person I've lost. Yeah.
But interesting point about Christmas.
Good.
Christmas is when you feel it even more because there's an empty space at the table, isn't there?
It helps to talk about it, and a bereavement counsellor just knows how to do it. They just know how to do it.
Yeah, get that. If you're going through it, get that help.
Yeah.
So whether it's last week or 30 years ago, go and...
It doesn't do away with your memories. It doesn't cancel anything. It just seems to help.
Does indeed.
Worth doing. Anyway, look, let's move on to the sport.
Indeed.
That's why you're here. Let's talk Rory McIlroy, should we?
Yeah, why not? I mean, look, he has been very critical of this separation tour in golf, the Saudi-backed, the outliers, the bogeymen, if you like, of the golfing landscape. He's always previously said he's been, don't forget he's a world #1. He's been one of the key protagonists in saying this isn't a good thing for golf, and he said that anyone who joins the LIV Tour shouldn't be able to compete in the DP-sponsored or DP-backed Ryder Cup. He's changed his tune this week because somebody else changed. No, but to be fair, it's somebody else changed their tune because Jon Rahm, who a two-time major winner, who also criticised this LIV event for ages, saying, look, I don't like the format, money doesn't make any difference to me, I could already survive, if I left golf now, I could already survive and live a happy life.
When someone waved 476 million quid in front of him.
Exactly, and that changed. And there he was, a LIV baseball cap and a LIV baseball jacket, saying he was really excited about the challenge, and he's excited about the 54-hole courses and everything.
No, he's excited about going to the bank.
Exactly.
So what's Rory McIlroy saying now?
Well, he's saying that, he's been critical of it, and Rory McIlroy hasn't gone anywhere. So he stuck to his guns, but he's saying that, look, he can see the way the wind is blowing. There was a framework agreement last summer where they were going to work together. It had to happen, and it really did. They couldn't exist separately. And so there's a bit of a thawing from everybody. And Rory McIlroy says, look, to protect the integrity of the Ryder Cup, we now have reached a point where anyone who competes in the LIV Tour has to be able to be eligible for the Ryder Cup. Jon Rahm knocked in the last 3 key putts in last summer's the tournament a few months ago.
So it'd be wrong to keep him out.
Well, it's going to be devalued. It's a little bit like when Virginia Wade won Wimbledon in 1977. Well, there was always an asterisk next to it because not all the top players were competing.
Rory's after a cheque from LIV as well now. Not that I don't blame you. Don't blame you, Rory. I'd go for it. We're tight, sadly, but we'll catch up with you a little bit later on. Aidan, thanks very much indeed.
Yeah, because there's lots more to talk about in Headline Makers. That's coming up for you.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Put in your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new
It's
teeth.
your new
Yes, I
teeth.
know.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
$7:44, good morning to you. Watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Yes, and joining us to go through some of the day's headlines, author Ella Whelan and Deputy Editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers. What did I say there? Deputy Editor of Spiked.
Hey, it was just about right.
Was it? Oh, good, I'm glad. Fraser, yeah, the COVID inquiry and Boris Johnson's performance.
So Boris Johnson was grilled over 2 days at the COVID inquiry. I mean, I've found a story in the Mail that's talking about more behind the scenes, looking at the lawyers in the inquiry, and they're being paid an absolute fortune.
And there are so many of them.
There are so many. There are hundreds of them. So it's costing around £750,000 a day whenever the inquiry is sitting, and half of the money is going to these lawyers.
Where's the other half going?
I guess on the building, on various things. The judge herself is on over 200 grand a year as well. But Hugo Keith KC, the lead counsel, who people will have seen grilling Boris Johnson, the Mail have gone to his website and looked at how he describes himself. And he describes himself as a top performer, as having a galaxy-sized brain, very
on his own website.
Incredibly sort of full of himself. And people will have noticed, if they've been watching, that this inquiry doesn't seem to... obviously it's about the whole pandemic, but it covers almost everything. It seems to cover a lot of the obsessions of the political class. So, Boris Johnson was being grilled on the gender balance of his team, whereas when he tried to raise the question of where did the virus come from, did it maybe come from a lab, he was told to be quiet and told that this is outside of the scope of the inquiry.
It's like all the stuff about his WhatsApp messages, which we've been playing a clip of this morning. And whereas part of me thinks, well, yes, it's a question that needs to be answered, in terms of saying, how do we prepare ourselves for this happening again, who cares what's happened to his WhatsApp messages? That's not going to help us in the future.
Well, especially as we know that a huge amount of the WhatsApp messages was this kind of frivolous sort of nonsense. Do you call it banter? Do you call it idiot behaviour between him and the ministers and calling people rude names and things like that? It's of no political interest to, you know, if he was still Prime Minister perhaps, but there's no political interest to us, particularly for planning for future pandemics. We keep being told that this is inquiries about making us ready and learning lessons. I just see it as a sort of, it's like a pantomime performance. It really, you know, you have, and the way it's reported in the media, the idea of a blockbuster showdown between Cummings or whoever, or Johnson and whoever. And I think actually we have to remember that those years were horrendous. They were not just because people died, but also because people's lives were shattered by successive lockdowns.
Well, that's, you see, where the gender balance does come in quite interestingly, doesn't it? Because I know that in many instances there were criticisms that some of the committees that were sitting were entirely male, and there was no female voice. And I know it doesn't only take a female voice to say, but there was nobody there to say, hang on a minute, what about nurseries and schools? And what about my granny in the care home? And the female perspective was very important, in hindsight, very important, and wasn't voiced fully enough.
Well, I think you know, I think there are some points where people have said that because of this, there was sort of male obsessions, like you know, certain shooting was allowed or in certain periods, and you know, obvious things weren't. Childcare wasn't really thought about, but at the same time, I mean, I saw
shooting, but no.
there was, but there was also this suggestion when Helen McNamara was on the stand a couple of weeks ago that, you know, had there been more women in the top team, fewer women would have died from domestic abuse. And I just think, well, actually, no, that the cause of that was lockdown. You could have as many female perspectives on lockdown
that
you
perspective
like.
still needed to be heard. It wasn't.
What?
It does, but I think that I think probably the worst thing that's coming out of this inquiry is that the narrative is honing down to coming. You can see the conclusion coming that lockdowns didn't happen fast enough or quick enough or weren't severe enough. And there are lots of people who lost loved ones to COVID, and the situation in care homes and all the rest of it is terrible. But I think most people's perspective is that the damage in their lives has been done to an enforced kind of anti-sociability. And actually probably I think that certainly I would, if I was one of the people in this inquiry, want to ask, did you really think about what this was going to do to a nation's psychology, emotion, sociability? Finances, you know, all the rest of it.
Well, yeah, that does need to be looked at. But then, of course, you've got to balance it out and say, well, what was it the least worst option? Because that's what we just don't know.
And that's the lesson we should be learning.
And that's something the inquiry doesn't seem to want to address. It has taken it as read.
Do you get the feeling as well that they're asking questions that are just sort of about feeding the press the next day's headline?
That's what I said about Blockbuster. It's like there's well, I think you have all these kind of punchy lawyers looking for their moment as well. I don't want to be too cynical, but there is this sort of feeling of we're gonna get Boris Johnson. There's lots of people in the country that want to get Boris Johnson, but it's not appropriate in a sort of process like this. This is meant to be cold, considered, and come up with sort of facts to plan future policies.
Ella, let's have a look at something totally different, should we? And this is professional Santas, the ones who help Father Christmas when he can't get everywhere at Christmas.
Yes, St Nick's Subs. It's from a sort of review of business insurance policies, but looked at what sort of situation companies were at and found that there was a severe lack of professional Santas, and that there are... It's just very funny because it obviously is a very serious job, and just getting your dad to put on a suit and pretend to be Santa doesn't work for everyone. But they have Steve Townsend, who's a professional Santa, quoted as saying, it's a really big problem. I'm booked up and I'm having to travel greater distances, which means mounting petrol bills. Surely the sleigh gets
but only the actual Father Christmas gets the sleigh.
But I think the reason I picked this out was because, you know, OK, there's less professional Santas. But I actually think now, because I'm gearing up for the Christmas season with the one-year-old and talking to people about, you know, the stay-in-plays and groups I go to about Christmas parties. And it just isn't the same now because there's such a sort of... I remember my dad going in and getting dressed up and everyone bringing food and it being a much more informal place. I think now Christmas parties, particularly for kids, are so swamped in health, I don't want to be that person that nags on health and safety, but health and safety or rules, I can't bring stuff into the nursery because you don't know, someone said to me, well, you don't know what the hygiene is like in people's homes, and you think, oh dear. It's, yeah, that sort of sense of people coming together informally and throwing everything together is gone.
You can't take your toddler swimming anymore because you can't take photographs of them taking their first,
Can't you?
You're not allowed cameras, no, not with children.
Do you think it's got worse since COVID as well? Do you know that people are a bit more...
Yeah.
Especially talking about hygiene, that's made me think that people are wary of interacting.
I don't want to rush you, but this is a story Anne is desperate to talk about, Fraser. It's true.
It's a fascinating story.
This is in the Mail about Viagra.
Yeah, so there's going to be a new BBC drama about the origins of Viagra called Man Up. But the story is absolutely fascinating. It came about completely by accident. It was an unintended side effect of a drug that they wanted to treat angina with it. It turned out the nurse asked all these men, they're all coal miners in Merthyr Tydfil, and only one of them was brave enough to admit when they were asked...
They were all doing the trial.
They're all doing this, sorry, they're all doing this clinical trial, but only one of the men was brave enough to admit what one of the side effects was, the famous getting you ready, performance ready, I guess you could say. And... everyone...
Dramatically so.
Dramatically so.
And he was the only one who had the courage to
He was the only one. But
tell the nurse.
Once he admitted it to the nurse, then the other men said, oh, yes, I've had the same thing. And that's where this was born. And it's fascinating, all the other things that people have tried in order to mimic the experience of Viagra in history. People have tried to use... crocodile parts, rubbing them on their downstairs back in ancient Egypt. The ancient Greeks used spicy peppers.
Spicy peppers?
Russians used to believe that you could they'd hoped that you could transplant monkey testicles into our own. They didn't actually try this out, but they believed that might work.
I'm glad
so thankfully we have
pill
exactly.
instead.
So thankfully we have the blue pill, and it's
and
one
the
of the most...
drama is written by Russell T Davies.
Yes.
The Doctor Who writer.
The Doctor Who writer, and I can't remember what's the name of the AIDS drama he did recently.
Well, he's been in some controversy recently because of his mangling of Doctor Who. But if there was ever someone who was...
No, look, the man is a genius for an...
No, if there was ever going to be someone who could do one like this, it would be Russell T Davies. And people laugh at Viagra and all the rest of it and make it sound, it has a bad rap. There's actually... people sort of think there's still a sort of stigma around it. I think it was quite...
nudge, wink, wink.
Yeah, but actually it's, relationships and love and all the rest of it is a huge part of people's lives. And
at the end of
facilitating that, especially when you're older, is a wonderful thing.
At the end of this clinical trial, the doctors said to all of the men on the trial, now you've done the trial, you've got to give the drug back, please. And they refused.
Yeah, no one would. And it's quite moving, actually. One of them saying this is the first time, it actually really repaired relationships with his wife. So, we can laugh at it. It seems trivial, but it's really important, and it's one of the most prescribed drugs of all time, and there's a good reason for that.
Well, there you go. On that note, we'll leave it there.
I told you it'd be eye-popping. It's a great
eye-popping.
story.
Eye-popping.
Here's the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's a bit of a wet start to the weekend across the UK, and there will be further wet and windy spells throughout the weekend, but also some sunshine at times, but certainly not through this morning for many of us. There are weather warnings in force for heavy rain across southern areas of the UK, as well as Northern Ireland and southwestern Scotland, where we've already seen a lot of rain so far this week. The rain will push up to the northeast, with behind it we'll see some sunshine developing for many western and central areas through the afternoon. Highs around 13 or 14 degrees, but the winds are going to be very strong, particularly across the coast. We could see gusts in excess of 60 miles per hour, so do take care if you are out and about along these areas. Then overnight, we'll see the rain generally clear across southern areas, so a dry, clear night for central southern areas, but some cloud will linger across many northern areas, and the rain will continue to persist across parts of Aberdeenshire. With more in the way of clear spells, it will be a slightly cooler night, but still a fairly mild night considering what we've seen recently. Sunday morning, we'll see a dry spell across many central and eastern areas, so some early sunshine to be had and light winds for a time, but then another gusty and wet spell of weather pushes through the course of Sunday. It does turn drier behind it across central and western areas once again, with a risk of showers, but the winds do also pick up, so despite the 13 or 14 degrees, it will still feel fairly fresh.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock, Saturday, the 9th of December. Today, integrating migrants into society is impossible at current levels. That's according to Robert Jenrick, who, of course, quit his cabinet position as immigration minister earlier this week.
And is it a Brexit-style divide that's going on? The parliamentary vote on the Rwanda deportation scheme threatens to rip the Tories in two, say experts, and they're comparing it to the crisis we all saw around the Brexit referendum.
Now, as high streets across the country are struggling because of the ongoing cost of living crisis, traders are hoping that millions of pounds of investment will help save Britain's traditional shopping centres. Our reporter spoke to some of those affected.
Traders left. COVID killed 50% of the trade, and the place has looked really scruffy and dark and dismal for a few years now.
Later on in the programme, in Britain's Biggest Stories, we look back at how Boris Johnson got on during the COVID inquiry.
Do you know why your phone was missing those 5,000 odd WhatsApps?
I don't know the exact reason, but it looks as though
It's something to do with the app going down and then coming up again.
And with yellow weather warnings on the way, Annie has your latest forecast.
There are rain and wind warnings in force across the UK this weekend, but there are some chances of some fine weather. You can find out where and when with me a little bit later on.
And of course there's sport with Aidan.
Yes, indeed. In the Premier League, Manchester United's Jadon Sancho is told to apologise once again to Erik ten Hag if he's to have a future at Old Trafford. And could we finally see the return of Russian and Belarusian athletes to the Paris Olympics?
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
You know, when it comes to the high streets, I think the high streets need a proper rethink, actually, because times they are a-changing. However, parking is the big issue. So many of you getting in touch saying, well, if there's decent parking, cheap parking,
yes, cheap parking,
then you go, and it is that encouraging. It's a real deterrent if you go somewhere. Think, well, I'll pop to the shops, but it's going to cost me £2.60 or whatever.
And it'll be impossible to park anyway. In fact, John said so too a couple of hours ago when we started the programme, actually. I hope you're still watching, John. He says parking is a problem with markets and high streets. Sadly, parking has changed from a facility provided to support shopping to a money-making facility to provide for local authorities, including expensive councillors, their offices and other local authority expenditures. It's no wonder we shop online rather than searching and paying for spaces, often distanced from the shops where near spaces cost even more.
And you do get your job's worths. Andrew says he's parked by phone several times. Both times got a £40 parking ticket. First time, one wheel was 6 inches over a dotted white line. Second time, couldn't find the code on the nearest machine, so he crossed the road and used the code there.
You can't do it.
So it was directly opposite where the sign was, but supposedly a different code.
Yeah.
So, I mean, come on, play fair with people. Give them a fighting chance.
I used to live very near Stratford-upon-Avon, and that had a very vibrant high street and all the other streets around, lovely, lovely shops. And it was always buzzing, and we always said at the time, the reason is because there were lots and lots of spaces in front of the shops, but they were only for half an hour,
right.
3/4 of an hour. But that's good if you're popping, and that always meant that if you hovered a little,
someone would go.
Someone would go, and you could get in. So if you needed to pop to the chemist or something and get a prescription or whatever, something quick, you could do it. And that's why, obviously, there were longer spaces, longer waiting spaces, but there were lots of car parks.
Well, it's interesting, though, because we do have this thing, don't you? If you're going to go to the shops and it's a day out or a morning out or whatever, sometimes you do just want to go pick something up. You're only there 10, 15 minutes.
Absolutely. You've got to make it easy for shoppers to shop. Otherwise, you do not get the footfall. But it is, and John was dead right there, parking, instead of being, for us, a facility for us to use, it's become a money-making facility for councils, and we resent it.
Yeah, quite right. Anyway, keep your thoughts coming through on that one. gbviews@gbnews.com. Let's turn our attention to immigration, because Robert Jenrick, who was Immigration Minister until earlier this week, has written a damning article saying the Conservative Party faces red-hot fury from voters over its handling of the migration crisis.
He's writing in The Telegraph today, and the once close Sunak ally says that allowing historically unprecedented levels of migration is a best example of what he called a failed Westminster consensus. And he warned that centre-right parties right across Europe are going to be punished at the ballot box if they too don't handle the issue.
Well, he also says that it is impossible to have integration when you let in 1.2 million new people, as we've done over the last 2 years.
Setting out his plans to tackle the crisis, the now ex-immigration minister says GP services and hospitals don't grow on trees.
Well, add to all of that concern the spiralling crisis over the Rwanda scheme, and the government's own advice says that it only has a 50% chance of working. So will that split the Conservatives? Well, it is doing, frankly, Will it be as bad as Brexit in terms of the divisions?
And rather like Brexit, the divide is causing voters to look for alternatives, with the insurgent Reform UK now regularly polling above 10%. And that surely is nipping away at the Tories' heels.
Well, let's talk to Greater Manchester Conservatives Chairman Stephen Carlton-Woods, who joins us now. Good to see you this morning. This is really splitting the party, isn't it? I mean, Rishi Sunak seems to be... People on one side saying he's not going far enough, people on the other saying he's just going too far. He can't win, can he?
Well, I think this is more to do with the mainstream media trying to make a big split within the party. Obviously, it is a big bowl of contention, but whatever the government does with this, they're up against it, and the media are making a big thing about it. So when you're going through untested law, when someone doesn't like the decision, they'll go on to the next level up and things like that. So the big sticking point with this is with the Blair government setting up the Supreme Court. And since then, the Conservative government have done nothing about that. So that's really going to be a fly in the ointment for any decisions that are going to come in the future. And then on top of that, we've got our connection with the European Court of Human Rights, which is the ultimate thing that can overturn the Rwanda deal. So there's a lot more to it than just saying the party's split. People have different views of how we should go forward with this. But
that's the question.
Split as me.
Surely that's the question then. Which way should Rishi work? What should he do next?
Well, I think he's forced into this route with Rwanda, even though we've seen James cleverly saying, look, the Rwanda deal is not the be-all and end-all. But I think that Rishi feels as though he might have egg on his face if he doesn't proceed with it. And it's all right, people saying, oh, well, the law, we should sort of line your ducks up first to make sure that you know you're going to get it through a court. But as I said earlier, it's untested law. So there's always going to be an interpretation of that in a different way. And we've seen judges across the country have different interpretations of this anyway. So moving forward, it's a big unknown area. And the Supreme Court, well, that's besides the vote that we're going to have the second reading this week. And people are the media are trying to say, oh, we only need 29 Tory MPs to vote against it and it'll crash. I'm not so sure. We have to wait and see what happens there first, then we're on to the next stage. But it is a concerning time.
Yeah, but to be fair, you say the media is blowing it out of all proportion. The media is being told by members of the Conservative Party. I mean, this is the problem. It's not made up. It's members of the Conservative Party who are saying either it's too harsh or it's not harsh enough.
Right. There's different views across the party, that is true. But the media make mischief with the whole situation.
That's politics, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. So I'm reading into it, obviously different than what some media people are reading into it. But we just have to wait and see. Like when we have the second reading this week, there's a lot of pivots on that. So then at the end of the day, it could be down to the European Court of Human Rights that could overturn it.
Mm. Well, yeah, that's certainly a possibility.
Brings us back to square one.
Doesn't it, just Stephen Carlton-Woods? Good to get your perspective. Thank you very much indeed. I mean, look, the European Court of Human Rights, I mean, the problem there is that half the Conservatives are saying we need to leave it and the other half saying, no, we absolutely can't. I mean, don't forget, we were part of one of the key countries in setting it up.
Yeah, well, yes, but times was different then.
Well, they were, but it's an overseer.
But I still don't get, whatever you do, that when you are in the position of putting one migrant on that aeroplane, you will get a human rights lawyer stepping in and saying, hang on a minute, hold on.
Yes.
Arguing an individual case.
Well, yes. However, it was Lord What's-his-face who said it's only 50%.
50% chance of
50% chance of this whole thing succeeding. He does also go on to say in his assessment that he thinks the legislation is stringent enough to stop people from bringing individual cases.
We shall see, because I don't quite get that.
No, well, this is the problem. It's so
Everybody
complex.
has a human right to have their case argued, don't they?
No, well, you can make it so that's, you know, if you fall foul of the law, as it were, then you fall foul of the law. And that's it. So he's confident that that
But you have
won't
a lawyer
happen.
to represent you, don't you? Oh, I don't know. I agree. I mean, yes, wait and see, but how long can we go on waiting and seeing?
Well, yeah, not long at all, because that election is coming.
Now, here's something you're really worked up about, very much so this morning, actually. I think we all feel very strongly about our local high street, don't we? And maybe our local market. And in towns and cities right across the country, traditional markets are struggling, apparently. Footfall is dropping and shopping habits, of course, are changing.
Ah, yes, but there may be some hope on the horizon because some traders are benefiting from tens of millions of pounds of investment.
In Leicester, for instance, the 700-year-old market is closing because they're getting an £8 million regeneration. And some traders, though, are now saying goodbye to the place they've worked all their lives.
Well, our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, has more.
Leicester Market is in Simon's DNA. He comes from a long line of traders who've worked here for more than 100 years.
This is our store, what we've had for the last 4 or 5 generations.
The market's seen better days.
A lot of traders left. COVID killed 50% of the trade, and the place has looked really scruffy and dark and dismal for a few years now.
Supermarkets, COVID and online shopping all have played a role in pushing traditional markets to the edge.
Apples, pears, bananas, melons.
The number of traders working across Britain has fallen from 46,000 in 2009 to fewer than 32,000 now, according to the National Association of British Market Authorities. Part of the problem is an ageing workforce. Only 9% of traders are younger than 40.
There's been a market in Leicester for 700 years, but now this version is becoming a part of history as the council prepares to close it ahead of a big revamp to make it fit for a new generation of shoppers.
Mike is from Leicester City Council, which owns the market.
We're going to create a completely new trading environment for all the traders in here, brand new stalls, new lighting, lovely new roof with solar panels.
They're investing £8 million in renovations.
Some of the latest research around retail suggests that the future is more independent units, that people are not so keen on the larger shopping malls.
More than £100 million is being invested in markets by councils and private businesses, some of it from levelling up funding. Customers welcome the change.
I have noticed in recent years a little decline.
Obviously it's a traditional place, but like everything, it needs to be updated.
It could do with a revamp, and to make it look better would be an improvement on Leicester itself.
Closing for the last time, traders are moving to a temporary home.
You're going to come and see us, yeah? Take care. Thank you. I've seen my parents and all my grandparents all be here many years, so it'll be sad to see it getting knocked down.
A cash boost keeping the heart of British markets beating. Yet they still need customers, or that life will slowly slip away. Will Hollis, GB News in Leicester.
Well, former Bank of England and Treasury advisor Dr. Roger Giewolb is here in the studio. Good to see you, as always.
Good morning.
I mean, the amount of investment that's going into places like Leicester, is it going to make enough of a difference, do we think, to revitalise, in that case, that market?
No, I don't think so. I think it's going to make a huge difference, but it's going to create a completely different animal. I mean, we just keep seeing this. I think examples like Spitalfields and Portobello here in London, you know, they moved the large chains in and the whole thing changes. Here, you have a 800-year-old market, 800 years old, which has been in its present site for 700 years. It is the largest outdoor covered market in all of Europe. And so the roof leaks, and so it's a bit tatty. But, you know, what gets me is we've got the greatest craftsmen in the world in this country. Go fix it, because at the same time, these guys are being paid millions, aren't they, to build new shops, restaurants, and hotels that are oldie-worldy looking. We've got this right here. Just take a look at the architect's pictures of what they're going to do with this 8 million quid. I mean, it looks about, to me, I'm sorry, guys, but it looks about as interesting as the dog food section of Iceland.
Oh, that's a shame.
They create a very lovely shopping mall, but it's not a traditional British market. If we look at the French markets, where people go shopping at the market every day, and for some reason they're still popular.
They shop differently to us, though. The
Totally.
French, don't they?
So they go out and get fresh food every morning.
Every day.
Go downstairs to the market, get fresh food. We're not going to do that, but I really don't think gems like the Leicester market, 700 years old and beautiful, should be torn down.
No. So you do wonder then, would money be better spent in making sure, as we're getting lots of people emailing in, that parking is made more readily available and cheaper?
Well,
gets people in.
Give the 8 million quid to the nurses so they can go shop at the market. And the parking, just get, as you said a little earlier, these councils to stop charging. I mean, I don't even think you emphasized it enough. That is the major reason that footfall decreases in these places, because people are really offended by being ripped off like that.
I said earlier, we resent it.
And all the
really
tricks.
Do. You want to go and you want to support your local shops, and it's fun too anyway. And the parking restrictions just stop you.
I went to Barnet on a Sunday. No signs, okay? I get a £60 ticket for parking. That's it. Thanks, Barnet, you know? I complained, and they wrote back, said, the sign's at the end of the street.
Yeah, great.
Nowhere near where I was
you're
parked.
meant to know.
Yeah, like £5 for a sign, you know.
Alan's emailed in. Alan says, councils don't offer free parking because they so need the income. But what if the first hour were free? That would encourage loads more people to visit rather than buying online.
Sure. There's loads of options.
There are lots of ideas, aren't there? It's just that councils don't seem to be really interested in us.
No, they don't. Roger, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Now to something we've been talking about all week, and that's how Boris got on at the COVID inquiry. Because when he was there, he suggested that the real origins of COVID are yet to be discovered, and he concluded his evidence to the public inquiry into the pandemic, saying that earlier this week.
Well, let's have a look back at some of the most talked about moments.
Do you know why your phone was missing those 5,000 odd WhatsApps?
I don't know the exact reason, but it looks as though it's something to do with the app going down and then coming up again, but somehow not automatically erasing all the things between that date when it went down and the moment when it was last backed up. So I can't give you the technical explanation, but that's the best I'm able to give. He came to me and said, this is people have got gold complexes and internecine warfare going on here. What I saw was a country that needed continuous, urgent action, and it needed solutions to be found.
Do you take responsibility for the lockdown decisions, whichever way they went, and their timeliness, whatever my lady makes of them? The manner in which patients were discharged from hospitals into the care sector?
Of course.
You were, I think, less sympathetic to the needs of those persons suffering from long-term sequelae, that is to say, suffering from the condition known as long COVID. You questioned for quite some time whether or not that condition truly existed, and you equated it to Gulf War syndrome repeatedly. Is that fair?
Not really, no. The version of events that has entered the popular consciousness about what is supposed to have happened in Downing Street is a million miles from the reality of what actually happened.
A behaviour of your officials and advisors, and you knew how it would look, but you didn't care that much.
I did care, and to say that I didn't care about what was happening generally is the complete opposite of the truth. And yes, I think that we could have done more in number 10 to insist that people thought about the way their behaviour would be perceived by others. And I made this point repeatedly to the various inquiries that have been held already into this matter. And we should have thought about what it would look like to have people out in the garden when other people were not allowed in the garden, even though the garden was being used as a place of work.
We're joined now by political commentator Piers Pottinger. It's great to see you. Is this whole inquiry making you comfortable or uncomfortable?
Well, I'm afraid I think it's a fiasco. We're spending an enormous amount of money on this. It's going on for years. It's a sort of something that has become endemic in this country. Don't forget the Grenfell Tower inquiry is not yet produced its report after 4 years. Hugo Keith, who's a very good lawyer we saw there in the clips, normally has lowered the level of this into petty tittle-tattle, you said, he said, and things like WhatsApps from Simon Case, the Cabinet Office, the head of the Cabinet Office, saying things like, oh, I've had a long day, I'm going home. I'm sorry, what's that got to do with anything?
Absolutely.
And what we should be focusing on is surely to be prepared for the next time and to be looking at where the medical decisions went wrong. For example, we have SAGE still in operation, a committee of over 60 academic scientists. Now, how can you get a committee of 60 academics to come to any conclusion? The interesting thing in that SAGE committee, there wasn't a single GP. They were all academic scientists, not proper medical experts in this kind of field. Where was a professor of immunology?
Yeah, you need a mix. Look, with all of it, it begs the question, what is the whole point of this?
Yeah.
And as you say, we seem to have an endemic of inquiries in this country, none of which actually ever seem to make that much difference.
Well, partly because they take so long, people have really then moved on and forgotten about some of it, and also that they're badly run. And I mean, I'm sure Lady Hallett is a wonderful judge, but I mean, she was pulling faces when Boris was giving evidence, which I thought was shocking.
Inappropriate. I thought so too.
And I mean, he was the Prime Minister.
Judges never do that.
No, and of course, poor old Boris. The inquiry was his idea. He's facing the music in his own inquiry. But
what music is he facing?
Well,
because
not
to
much.
me, I'm not interested in seeing them pillory Boris Johnson. That's not going to teach us.
No.
The only thing it might teach us is it's better to have a government with a strong leader.
Yeah.
But you're quite right. Why doesn't Casey keep coming back to what lessons must we learn?
Absolutely. And also the point is that it's quite clear that some of the science, as they always kept saying during the pandemic, we're following the science. Quite a lot of the science was wrong. And for example, they said, well, they're going to need all these extra ventilators. It turned out that calculation was entirely wrong, and they're now rotting away in some industrial warehouse in the Midlands.
Yeah, and we need to know whether that could have been avoided with decent foresight, or whether anyone might have made that mistake. Well, those are the things we need to know, and yet they're more interested in making Boris look uncomfortable.
Absolutely, and the inquiry is ignoring, for example, Dr. Carl Hennigan, who's the head of evidential science medicine at Oxford University, and also a practicing GP. He, before he gave evidence, submitted a 72-page written report with his views on where things had gone wrong and how he was ignored every time he tried to make points. They didn't refer to the document, ask him about it. Instead, Hugo Keith was asking him about rude WhatsApps. Did he get any of those? For goodness sake, this isn't a children's playground inquiry. This should be about preparing and getting things right for the next pandemic when there will be one.
We're going to face one day an inquiry into this inquiry.
Well, again...
that'll cost another
that would be
£50,000 a day. Lovely, Piers, thank you very much indeed.
Great pleasure.
Crackers, isn't it? I thought these inquiries are all crackers. Anyway, look, time for your latest weather update. Here's Annie.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's a bit of a wet start to the weekend across the UK. And there will be further wet and windy spells throughout the weekend, but also some sunshine at times, but certainly not through this morning for many of us. There are weather warnings in force for heavy rain across southern areas of the UK, as well as Northern Ireland and southwestern Scotland, where we've already seen a lot of rain so far this week. The rain will push up to the northeast. Behind it, we'll see some sunshine developing for many western and central areas through the afternoon. Highs around 13 or 14 degrees, but the winds are going to be very strong, particularly across the coast. We could see gusts in excess of 60 miles per hour, so do take care if you are out and about along these areas. Then overnight, we'll see the rain generally clear across southern areas, so a dry, clear night for central southern areas, but some cloud will linger across many northern areas and the rain will continue to persist across parts of Aberdeenshire. With more in the way of clear spells, it will be a slightly cooler night, but still a fairly mild night considering what we've seen recently. Sunday morning, we'll see a dry spell across many central and eastern areas, so some early sunshine to be had and light winds for a time, but then another gusty and wet spell of weather pushes through the course of Sunday. It does turn drier behind it across central and western areas once again with a risk of showers, but the winds do also pick up, so despite the 13 or 14 degrees, it will still feel fairly fresh.
Brilliant.
Now, oh, go on, have you got a view?
Well, it's about Christmas dinner. Abigail says, I've got many relatives in the USA, because we were saying that maybe the Americans don't celebrate Christmas lunch as much as they do Thanksgiving. But she says the majority of Americans do celebrate Christmas, same as us. They have the big Christmas dinner, but because they've already had turkey at Thanksgiving, they have a huge ham with many fab ways of baking it.
Oh, well, there you go.
And Mark from Wolverhampton says, we're off to Alicante for a week. I've spent all year serving my customers 6 and 7 days a week, so I'm looking forward to my Christmas lunch in The View. I cooked Christmas dinner every year until I was 50. After that, we've eaten out.
Oh, well, I think that's fair enough, Mark. Good on you. Now, well, the festive season is a time for merriment, cheer and some fizz for most people, but would you want a Christmas alcohol-free? We're going to talk about that in just a moment.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth.
It's your new
It's- I
teeth.
know.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, are you going to a works Christmas party this year?
Do you like works Christmas parties?
Well, I did go to I had some drinks on Sunday, but our official works Christmas party is on Saturday. But I won't be going.
Working.
We're working the next day, so won't be going to that. But if you do go to one, should it be alcohol-free?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
That's what?
Because
And
then no
Diamond.
awful mistakes are made.
Oh, I don't know. Well, let's talk to one boss who believes that the booze can cause a bit of a problem. That's Kelly Tucker. And also Jess Barclay, who thinks, well, drink what you like. Kelly, let's start with you first and foremost. It's a bit miserable to have a staff party with no booze, isn't it?
I mean, yes, it could be a bit miserable, but I think it's about maybe drinking in moderation and also setting some expectations to ensure that people don't drink too much.
Do that because Christmas parties I've been to where there has been booze, somebody always ends up drinking too much, and then then it gets horrendously and professionally embarrassing, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yes, it can do. I think that we need to be mindful that people, whilst they're out celebrating, they're still with their colleagues and it's still seen as a work event. So that's why I think drinking in moderation would definitely be my recommendation.
OK, Jess, so it's not about being a killjoy, it's about being professional employees, even when you're at a Christmas party.
I did a dry Christmas. I did a whole 12 months where I didn't drink because that was my choice. And I think I find the very interesting thing with Christmas parties, like half of the budget ends up being spent on alcohol, which I kind of feel like is a bit silly because what if there's non-drinkers and stuff there? But in the end, shouldn't we be responsible for our own actions? So if we want to drink and make an ass out of ourselves and potentially lose our jobs, then it's kind of, aren't you getting to see someone's true colours? Also, what else are everyone going to talk about for the rest of the holiday, for the rest of the year? Like, we need some funny stories to keep us going, like how so-and-so mucked up at the Christmas party. But also, if you're worried about, your employees drinking too much, why not pick a Christmas party activity that isn't alcohol-based? Instead of being like, let's go out for dinner and drinks, but don't drink too much, why not pick something that's not something that centres around alcohol in the first place? Isn't it about saying thank you to your employees? So just pick a different activity.
Yeah, but your
it feels a bit funny to
employees,
say,
Jess,
let's go out drinking, but don't drink.
Your employees want a knees up. I mean, I don't drink, but I wouldn't ever say to the bosses here, have a Christmas party that doesn't have any booze in it, because people want to have a knees up. They want to let their hair down. They want to get a bit sloshed.
So for me personally, I've got enough events like that at Christmas so I work for myself now, so I can get drunk in front of myself. It's fine. My boss is a tirade because that's me. But when I had a boss, those were my more sensible events. And then I have my events with my friends and things that I can go a little bit crazy in. But to be honest, some of my friend events are completely sober. One of my Christmas activities is going around and seeing all the Christmas windows in London, and that's like very wholesome and very like in the middle of not the middle of the day because it needs to be dark. But then there have been events that have involved copious amounts of alcohol and late night espresso martinis and and all of that. But I'm not going to do them in front of. For me, it's clients, I guess. I'm not going to do that in front of clients. But it's my personal choice, and I wouldn't take clients to a drinking environment because I wouldn't want to be drunk in front of them. So I'm kind of like, if you don't want people to make bad choices, don't do an alcohol-based event, but say, moderate yourselves. And I think there's different ways of celebrating.
And maybe, Kelly, then if you are going to have booze at a Christmas party like that, you should confiscate all mobile phones? Because that's the danger now, isn't it? Everything you do, and if you're making mistakes, everything you do not only gets photographed but recorded and uploaded before you've even got a taxi home.
What do you think, Kelly?
Nope.
No, she's gone.
She's
gone.
The image had gone frozen.
Yeah, all right.
Anyway.
Thanks to Kelly, thanks to Jess.
Thanks to Jess.
It's not a bad idea, that.
What, confiscate mobile phones?
Yeah,
Somebody will always smuggle one in there, wouldn't they?
Put them in a box somewhere.
See, that's what Partygate was all about in the end. We wouldn't have known, would we?
No.
If we hadn't had proof that parties had gone on because they were silly enough to get out their mobile phones and film themselves breaking COVID rules. There are brains inside number 10, aren't there?
Well, I'm not getting into...
Superior brains.
I'm not getting into that. I can't bear the emails. Aidan, sport. Jadon Sancho.
Yeah, he is somebody who's going to be in the in tray of Sir Jim Ratcliffe when he takes over Manchester United. He's been...
Or the out tray.
Yeah, possibly, yeah. Well, I don't know, he cost £73 million, so they can't dispense with him quickly, but this player is... Look, as you say, £73 million in July 2021. He was guilty, Anne, of, according to his manager, Erik ten Hag, some months ago, of not meeting the standards required by the culture of the club. He wasn't training well enough. Erik ten Hag wanted the culture of the club to change when he came into the club 2 years ago, and he didn't meet those standards. And that's a very strange thing to do when a player is worth that much money. He's been ostracised. He's been told to train with the academy. This will make you laugh. He's had his food. He has his food brought over from the first team training centre to the academy, just so that he can eat the same food as the first team players, but he has to train with the under-23s. So he's been... I think that's quite humiliating.
Yeah.
There's been stories this morning saying that he hasn't been turning up for those training sessions, which some people might say, well, they might have some sympathy with him. But Erik ten Hag was reminded of it yesterday because it's brought into focus because of the new takeover. The new guys will probably say, well, hang on a minute, we've got a massive asset here. He's an extraordinarily gifted player. Why isn't he in your team? United are not exactly pulling up trees at the moment. And so Ten Hag said, look, he knows what he has to do. It's up to him. He has to apologise. And then you flip it round and say, well, is it really that difficult to say sorry if it means you're denying yourself the opportunity to play for one of the biggest football clubs in the world?
There's stubbornness on both sides by the sound of it.
There is, and I wonder whether something has to thaw on both sides. But he's determined to improve discipline at the club. There was a story in the week that United players, the dressing room was fractured. United responded by banning 4 different media outlets. And a friend of mine wrote the story, and he says to me, "Tell you what, it's absolutely true, and I'm not backing down." And so United, usually when they kind of rail against that kind of thing, it's usually because the story's true.
Because it's true.
Yeah, yeah. Let's have a quick look at Pep Guardiola, because I love this story. They're behaving like cats, says Pep Guardiola about Manchester City.
Too much success. They've been purring a bit too much in the league over the last few years, and they've been stroked like cats a bit too much. And sometimes it just makes you take your eye off the ball, doesn't it?
We can all go through claws out.
Yeah, but it causes headlines like the one we're seeing in the moment at the Star, careless whiskers.
I think there were a lot of cat ones this morning. I thought that was
perfect storm.
the best. That was the best one. But look, they're playing Luton tomorrow. They should get back on track, but they're losing games at the moment. They haven't won in the league since November the 4th, so they need to get back on track with that.
Yeah, they do.
Looking forward to very quickly to the Paris 2024 Olympics. The Russian and Belarusian athletes will be able to take part?
Yeah, the conditions of their inclusion means that they have to compete neutrally, without flags, emblems or anthems of their country. Now, us three had a little debate last time, didn't we, in saying, do we think of these athletes as representing their countries or do we think of them as individuals? I suppose it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It depends who it is, doesn't it? But I believe you've got an update, Anne, on...
yeah. Well, every Olympics, the host country is allowed to include one new sport. And the one that's going to be included for Paris is breakdance.
I mean, for heaven's sakes.
That's going to be an Olympic sport in Paris.
I didn't mind a bit of body popping back in the day.
I tell you what, it would be very watchable.
You think so?
Oh, won't
Not
it
an
be?
Olympic sport.
If every host gets to nominate a new sport every time, then in 100 years' time, when we're all gone,
forever.
It's going to be like a 3-year Olympics.
I think every so often some are weeded out.
Get chucked out.
Yeah, but I think didn't we have in 2012 we had beach volleyball?
They
created a beach.
Yes, it has been. But Seb Coe, just to conclude, has said that it won't be they won't be competing in athletics. So it's a Pyrrhic victory for these athletes because anyone who's involved in track or field, and I think of track and field events as an integral part of the Olympics, especially the Summer Olympics, they won't be able to compete unless something changes before the Paris Olympics comes around.
Custard cream eating. So I could be Olympic champion in. I love a custard cream.
Well,
would you be able to move, though?
Doesn't matter.
For 2012, we had freestyle skiing, women's boxing and mixed tennis doubles. They were added to the Olympics for 2012.
It's funny, because I'd have said mixed doubles tennis would have been in there years ago, but it shows how much I watch the Olympics, I suppose.
All right, we've got to move on, because I'm being yelled at very, very loudly by our boss.
I don't want to get you in trouble.
Yeah, because we're running out of time. We've got headline makers coming up in just a moment.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 8:45. Good morning to you. Time to take you through the headlines today with our headline makers, author Ella Whelan and deputy editor of Spite, Fraser Myers. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Let's kick off with COP28, should we, Fraser?
Yes.
Is that still going on?
It is still going on. They're going to draw up a sort of communique together. They're, arguing. They're always arguing about the wording. Do they say, are we going to phase out fossil fuels or phase down fossil fuels? Does it matter? And Andrew Neil in the Daily Mail is suggesting no, it doesn't, because despite this being the biggest COP ever, with 90,000 delegates, twice as big as the one in Glasgow that we hosted, actually, the world is still producing more hydrocarbons than ever. It's been a huge jump in the past year or so. America is producing more oil than ever, despite the fact that under President Biden, they're very sort of finger-wagging administration. John Kerry is going around telling us off. He was telling off Rishi Sunak for his sort of watering down of net zero, but they're doing similar. And of course, quite funny, it was hosted in Dubai, very important petro state. The head of the COP28 was also the head of the state oil company, the person presiding over it, and he was alleged to have been cutting oil deals on the side while having meetings about reducing climate change. I think the message here is that, for all the talk about the need to draw down, reduce greenhouse gases, reduce fossil fuels, actually we kind of need them. People are showing countries are showing in their behaviour that coal and oil and gas are just necessary. They're just part of... For now, yeah. They're just a part of how we do
So it's all a bit of a cop-out.
You could say that.
But there's the frustrating thing is that there are things that countries can be doing, like being serious about nuclear energy and nuclear power, which would, go some way to imagining a future in which you wouldn't have the downsides of fossil fuels. But instead of looking at that in a balanced, kind of innovative way, what we have is this sort of pretense that fossil fuels are pointless and evil, and that they serve no possible sort of benefit other than to pollute the nation.
There's no black and white with any of this, is
no.
there? With no grey, it's all black and white.
Well, yeah, but and then you have something like the war in Ukraine come along, and suddenly countries are faced with the very real prospect of how their citizens are going to heat their homes and run their cars and all the rest of it, and a cost of living crisis. And I think there's something positive in the last few years around the net zero debate, in that there has been quite a big pushback. Even Rishi Sunak is still wedded to net zero. He's a lot of blow and nonsense about taking it seriously. I'm quite sceptical of his turn against the green sort of obsession. But there has been a crack and opening in the debate where I think there has been some kind of criticism of net zero and what it means for ordinary people's quality of life.
You've picked out a story about Ryan O'Neill. And when I came in to the office this morning, 99.9% of the people who work here never heard of Ryan O'Neill. To me, it's a massive story.
Oh, he's a Hollywood legend for many people.
Died at the age of 82.
And had suffered for a long time with his health, with leukemia and other things. And there's some, he's blockbusters like Love Story, Paper Moon, who... He performed alongside his daughter, Tatum O'Neill.
Was he in Bones?
Yes.
Yes.
Ah, that's where I know him from.
Yeah.
He played Bones' father.
But, one of those classic, remarkably good-looking. In Paper Moon, he is astonishingly good-looking. Still a good-looking...
Calm down.
No, but just one of those Hollywood...
He
Hollywood
was
stars.
That was the whole thing. He was the 70s dream guy. He really was. And, of course, the ultimate movie, the one he was really well known for, was Love Story, which was just what it said on the tin.
Yeah.
It was the most incredible. You've got to go home and watch it.
No.
He was also
We're watching Harry Potter's at the minute.
He was also in Barry Lyndon, if
Yes,
people
he
can
was.
take the 3-hour runtime, but, one of Stanley Kubrick's classics.
that's
So
right.
clearly had a great range of things he could do.
Yeah, no, he was massive, massive star. In fact, I think his son said on X, he was the massive star, particularly of the 70s.
Hollywood legend.
He was the ultimate Hollywood legend, full stop. And he really was. So I think it's important to mark.
Tell you what, typical Hollywood legend, though, troubled life.
Yes, very.
Which
Tatum, his daughter, who starred with him in Paper Moon, as you said, she got an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. She was 10 when she got that Oscar. She's still the youngest ever person to get an Oscar. And she was starring alongside her father, who was nominated for an Oscar for the same movie, but didn't get an Oscar. But she's had a terribly, terribly troubled life since.
And estranged from him alongside her brother Griffin, but then Tatum and him reunited in 2020. And so there was some reconciliation there.
Tell you what, I wouldn't swap my life for theirs for £1 million.
No.
Fraser, let's have a look at the Sun, should we? Kemi Badenoch says Brexit is working.
Yeah, Remainers won't mention it, but Brexit is working. She's talking about, you know, that let's not say the UK economy has been successful. She's putting a bit of spin on this, but it is true that relative to France and Germany, we've recovered slightly better from the COVID pandemic. And crucially, actually, which might surprise people, manufacturing is doing really well in the UK at the moment. It's actually, the value of it is increased enormously. And also some of the big firms like Nissan that we were told, there was this slogan around the referendum that if we leave, they leave. All these factories are going to pack up and leave and people are going to lose their jobs. And people would make fun of the stupid people of Sunderland. They voted for Brexit. They're going to make themselves unemployed. No, Nissan is doubling down on the UK. They're investing many billions more in their factories, and there's potentially a bright future for.
It was
UK
a scare campaign on all sides, actually.
Well, yeah,
wasn't it?
unfortunately.
Well, there was just this idea that it was going to be either the magic pill or the sort of death bullet for the British economy and the whole of our lives. When in actual fact, it was just. Brexit was the kind of beginning step to looking at how you might do politics in the future. So, but it's welcome news to kind of shut down some of the continuing scare tactics and scaremongering around the economy. But there is this sort of, it's very frustrating that particularly with politicians, there's this desire to either say everything's fine, see Brexit's brilliant, or everything's terrible, it's all Brexit's fault. When of course it's much more complicated than that.
I tell you what, I know people who still have their Brexit boxes.
What, you swear boxes?
No, packed up with food and things, because on the day we left, everything was going to collapse.
Preppers.
It was all that, toilet rolls, pot noodles, tins of beans, all in the boxes in the garage. And you just think, come on, but that's what people were like.
On the grounds that a few extra forms have to be filled in at Calais when, the food comes in. I mean, this was always hysterical. I mean, one of the things is that, international trade is actually not that significant as a proportion of, our economy. So it was never going to move the dial in a significant way anyway. As you say, it was a scare campaign. It was a way of trying to keep us in. And Brexit really, we didn't vote for Brexit for the economy so much. It was more about democracy and sovereignty. That's what people were interested in, taking back control, as they say.
Yeah. Just before we go, because we've only got a sort of a minute left, can I just ask you, and particularly Ella with this, because you've got a one-year-old second Christmas this year, but the first one where they'll actually know what's going on. How prepared are you? Because I'm feeling very unprepared.
Do you know that I'm knackered because I stayed up until I put Master and Commander, the film, on the telly, and I stayed up until midnight wrapping, and it was I've had boxes and boxes of stuff piling up, and so I'm relatively prepared, but I still am going to have to do that dash to some kind of supermarket to find some kind of. I've got family coming around on Sunday, but I like to do everything beforehand. I am quite organised about it, but I've seen pictures of your Christmas tree with your lights and everything. You were way ahead of the game.
The decks are all done. That's all fine, but it's the presents. The present, and then we need to sit down with the menu for Christmas dinner and actually work out what I need to work out with all of that.
We were talking about whether Americans do Christmas dinner in the usual way, the same way as us. Morning Ken, said, I've just heard your ridiculous observations about Christmas dinner in the USA. Ken. In all my 66 years of life as an American, I have never once seen either my family or any families in my acquaintance order takeout on Christmas Day, because that's what we concluded. From earliest childhood days, driving into the Bronx to the Irish grandparents for Christmas Day, or for that matter, any other holiday, or even just a regular old Sunday, the table was always decked out with a turkey or a roast beef or a leg of lamb or baked ham. Takeout for Christmas, please.
Do apologise.
Yeah.
No, apparently is it Japan or Singapore, they do KFCs. For Christmas Day. That's a big thing.
Wow.
Christmas KFC.
Yeah.
Piers Pottinger, one of the experts we were talking to earlier, said he was just going to the farmer's market to get his leg of goat.
Oh.
Wow.
A goat's leg on Christmas Day.
My husband's great aunt, who we're going to on the day after Boxing Day, does one of those duck and a duck and a duck, you know, the bird and a bird and a bird, which I've never had. It's the first time I'm going this year.
I did one
that
about...
seems medieval.
It is. I did one about 3 or 4 years ago, and I thought my sons would be terribly impressed with it because they're very into cooking. They thought it was the grossest thing they'd ever seen in their life. Yeah, because you put a small bird inside a bigger bird.
Turducken or something it's called, isn't it?
Is that just the preparation that was gross or the actual outcome?
No, just
Surely the
seeing
outcome was...
the idea of
Right.
3 or 4 animals all inside each other, gross, they said. So it went down.
And then inside another one when you eat it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
No, you slice it.
I think it's very odd. It's very odd.
It is medieval, as you say. It's a horrible
Yeah.
idea. I don't know why I did that. I did it as a vegetarian. It didn't mean anything to me.
Are you meant to finish it off with a swan or something?
I suppose in medieval times,
But I'm
may
going
well
to
have.
say something extremely controversial, which is I don't do turkey. I hate turkey.
Me too.
I do chicken. The thing that's important is the extras.
Yeah.
Never interested in turkey.
It's the roast potatoes that make it.
Yeah.
Or if you do like turkey, buy it on Boxing Day because it's usually really cheap.
It's not quite the spirit.
You don't want to
though,
go
is it?
shopping on Boxing Day. I don't understand people who do Boxing Day
Or,
shopping.
yeah, in the week after. Yeah.
The week after. Oh, there you go. Look, thank you both very much indeed. It's been very good to see you this
It's been lovely and festive.
Thank you.
George, you like sitting over here for a change?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just thought we'd try it out, give it a whirl.
It's, you know, a good test as to whether you've worn
the right
shoes.
shoes.
You don't seem to
I know
have
that feeling, I know. OK, if you're heading...
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new
It's
teeth.
your new
Yes, I
teeth.
know.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. 9 o'clock, Saturday the 9th of December. Today, integrating migrants into society is impossible at current levels. At least that's according to Robert Jenrick, who until earlier this week was Immigration Minister.
And is it causing a Brexit-style divide? The parliamentary vote on the Rwanda deportation scheme threatens to rip the Tories in two, according to experts who are comparing it to the crisis during the Brexit referendum.
As high streets across the country are struggling because of the cost of living crisis, traders are hoping that millions of pounds worth of investment will help save Britain's traditional shopping centres. Our reporter spoke to some of those affected.
Traders left, COVID killed 50% of the trade, and the place has looked really scruffy and dark and dismal for a few years now.
Elsewhere in Britain's biggest stories, we've been looking back at Boris Johnson and how he got on during his grilling in the COVID inquiry.
Do you know why your phone was missing those 5,000 odd WhatsApps?
I don't know the exact reason, but it looks as though it's something to do with the app going down and then coming up again.
And with yellow weather warnings on the way, Annie has your latest forecast.
There are rain and wind warnings in force across the UK this weekend, but there are some chances of some fine weather. You can find out where and when with me a little bit later on.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
On terms of that shopping issue, it's got you going today. Audrey says beware of all this sort of investment money going in. Chesterley Street, where she is, was a market town until the council decided to upgrade the site. And now we have no market. They killed the market, less football had killed the high street. It's dirty, shops closed and scallywags breaking shop windows. So that's a real shame, isn't it? So they've just spent the money wrongly, haven't they? Somehow. Whereas Lynn says we've got a beautiful village in Emsworth in Hampshire, full of little shops and once a month a local farmers market.
Yep.
Very nice.
Support the local farmers market, although sometimes they're not so local, are they?
No.
You go to what you think is a local farmers market and it's got all sorts of stuff from everywhere, just like a supermarket would.
There's no common sense. Nigel says Wealdon in East Sussex has just produced a massive transport plan to try to force the local population to walk or cycle everywhere. They intend to turn roads into cycle paths and bus lanes and restrict parking. Town centres will die. Yes, they will with that. Why? There's no joined-up thinking.
No,
sometimes.
and I'm also not terribly sure that we are changing the way we shop. We're changing the way we drive. And if they bring in sort of driverless... driverless cars, things that you can order up on an app and the driverless taxi comes to you and you go... That's going to change the nature of our high streets and markets as well, isn't it? So maybe it's inevitable, this sort of change.
Maybe. I don't know. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, Robert Jenrick, who up until earlier this week was Immigration Minister, has written a damning article warning that Conservatives face red-hot fury from voters over the handling of the migration crisis.
He's writing in The Telegraph today, the once close Sunak ally says that allowing historically unprecedented levels of migration is the best example of what he calls a failed Westminster consensus. And he warned that centre-right parties across Europe will be punished at the ballot box if they don't handle the issue.
Well, add into that his view that it is impossible to have integration when, and this is to quote him, when you let in 1.2 million new people, as we've done over the last 2 years.
Setting out his plans to tackle the crisis, the now ex-immigration minister says GP services and hospitals do not grow on trees.
Yeah, it's not setting out how to tackle it, is it? It's just stating the obvious.
Pointing out the obvious,
yeah. Anyway, look, all of this coming off the back of, or entangled with, we could say, the Rwanda scheme. The government's own advice says that scheme only has a 50% chance of working. And, of course, it is controversial and it is threatening to split the Conservatives.
Yeah, just like Brexit, the divide is causing voters to look for alternatives, with the insurgent Reform UK now regularly polling above 10%, which surely is nipping away at the heels of the Tories.
And let's talk to political commentator Alex Armstrong, who's here in the studio. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I mean, when you read it through like that, it's just an absolute disaster, isn't it?
Yeah, the Tory party is at war with itself again. It seems the biggest enemy they have is themselves at this point in time, which is not good when you have a general election right around the corner. On the news about this 50% at best chance of flights taking off through Rwanda will be another damning thing for Rishi Sunak to wake up to today. You know, the Attorney General's got this very, very good legal advice from the government's top legal advisor, Sir James Eddy, and that says that, you know, it's highly unlikely at all that any flights will take off and that the ECHR will step in most likely to stop those flights from leaving. However, it isn't unprecedented to say that you know, a country has gone against the ECHR. Just a few weeks ago, France actually defied an ECHR ruling. They sent back what they would call a radical Islamist from France back to, I think it was Uzbekistan. Now, so there is some precedence here for this. However, it's the scale at which deportations will happen that will be the big thing for the European Court of Human Rights. So, yeah, we're looking like Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman will be in the front pages for quite a few more months.
And that's the problem, isn't it? The divisions are making the headlines. And so I don't understand how Rishi Sunak can unite the party, which he must do behind this idea. I don't see how he's going to be able to unite them without looking utterly desperate and saying, if we don't unite, we will lose.
Yeah, so he was at the 1922 committee saying exactly this last week, saying, listen, if you don't back me, I'm out. And then what are you going to do? And I don't really think that voters are going to look at another potential Prime Minister as a candidate for a general election next year. I think their appetite for change is at zero at this point. Bearing in mind, Rishi Sunak is now just as unpopular as Liz Truss, I think even less so.
Really? Ratings are that low now?
Yeah. I think someone was putting up a lettuce the other day saying, we'll see if that's another one for Rishi to look out for. But, you know, there's...
What's he meant to do? I mean, what does the book say he should do at this point?
Well, I think...
Is there a book anywhere?
I don't think there's a book for this. This is unprecedented. You know, third Prime Minister in a few years. I think... I really do think it's a zombie government right now. I think they're just waiting to be obliterated.
So why doesn't he do the brave thing and call an election?
Well, I think it's just the old adage, you don't want to lose the power while you have it. But, you know, I mean, there's some reports here that Rishi Sunak's willing to listen to some of his right-wing MPs and potentially amend the deal for the Rwanda deal. So maybe he will concede after he's seeing that. We're talking about 2/3 of right-wing Tories potentially rebelling against this legislation, so it may not even take off.
Well, 2/3 is a majority for him, isn't it? So if he kowtowed, if he did what the right-wing want him to do,
yes,
then at least that's something, isn't it?
He might be hoping that Keir Starmer will start living up to his word and say that, oh, well, no, I'm anti-immigration as well, guys, because obviously Keir is trying to appeal to these disaffected Tory voters. We saw that with the Margaret.
But whenever you ask a Labour politician about that, what Keir should say, what Keir should do now, can't he be decisive? They answer the same way. Well, let's just wait and see.
That's right. Yvette Cooper's a good example.
She was doing
exactly
exactly that the other day. Yeah.
So it's all a big mess.
But this isn't fair on us, the voters, is it? It really isn't. We need some decisive leadership, and we need things to actually happen. When we learn how much Rwanda is costing us. What was the latest tally? 240
and
million.
No flights taken.
And nothing happening.
So it's been all a big show at the moment. I think the public are just at their wits' end with this. Manifesto after manifesto for the Tories has promised to cut immigration, sometimes to the tens of thousands. We're at 1.2 million, you know, before net.
Yes, but that's... What I don't understand with that is only a very small percentage of that is illegal migration. Most of it is legal migration. Therefore, we have allowed people in. We have issued visas. So they can't complain and say, well, it's too high, because it's actually the government that's done it.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say, Steve. I think you nailed it. This is the government's plan to grow the economy. They need to bring in migrants to grow the economy and to keep some services going. You know, there are things that they can look at. The highest part of this legal migration is student migration, alongside partners coming alongside too.
Yes, but at least those legal migrants are paying their way, aren't
right.
they? They're earning, they're paying taxes, they've got places to live.
Yes, but what they're also doing is using the resources, you know, GPs, hospitals, schools, school places and all that, and that's the concern.
And that's what Robert Jenrick's coming out saying today, saying, there's not enough services. But we know this. If you use a GP service, you'll know that the waiting lists are up. You'll know that it's harder to get a child into a school that you like. And so this is what really, I think, gets down to what the public dissatisfaction
is. And I think the other thing that's very frustrating is that the only time you hear a minister really giving his or her proper point of view, what they really think, is once they've resigned.
Well, that's part of being in government. You can't say what you think, obviously, under the rules. However, that's why a lot of them are realising now, if I don't step down and say what I think now, I'll have to hold my breath and let my voters tell me what they think at the election.
Yeah. OK. Alex, good to see you, as always. Thank you very much. I bet you've got a view on that.
Oh, bet you have.
gbviews@gbnews.com.
You were Rishi Sunak. Would you step down and say, all right, I've done my best. You have a go now.
Nice. Yes, you can't do that.
No, Prime Ministers don't
You can't do that, but I think perhaps he needs to show his mettle a bit more.
David Cameron did.
Yes, but he was criticised for that, actually, because it was the case of, well, you've landed the country in this situation, now you're just walking away from it. So he was criticised for that, which I sort of agree with, but...
Yes, you can see both sides, I think.
You can't win in politics.
No, well, no.
Can you win on the high street, though? Well, that's a big question.
It's getting everybody really going, though, because I think we all feel very, very strongly about our high streets and markets. In towns and cities across the country, traditional markets are struggling. Footfall is dropping and shopping habits are, of course, changing.
Yeah, but is there some hope on the horizon? Some traders are benefiting from tens of millions of pounds of investment.
In Leicester, for instance, the 700-year-old market is closing now, well, ahead of an £8 million regeneration. But some traders are now saying goodbye, then, to the place they've worked all their lives.
Well, our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, has more.
Leicester Market is in Simon's DNA. He comes from a long line of traders who've worked here for more than 100 years.
This is our store, what we've had for the last 4 or 5 generations.
The market's seen better days.
A lot of traders left. COVID killed 50% of the trade, and the place has looked really scruffy and dark and dismal for a few years now.
Supermarkets, COVID and online shopping all have played a role in pushing traditional markets to the edge.
Apples, pears, bananas, melons.
The number of traders working across Britain has fallen from 46,000 in 2009 to fewer than 32,000 now, according to the National Association of British Market Authorities. Part of the problem is an ageing workforce. Only 9% of traders are younger than 40.
There's been a market in Leicester for 700 years, but now this version is becoming a part of history as the council prepares to close it ahead of a big revamp to make it fit for a new generation of shoppers.
Mike is from Leicester City Council, which owns the market.
We're going to create a completely new trading environment for all the traders in here, brand new stalls, new lighting, lovely new roof with solar panels.
They're investing £8 million in renovations.
Some of the latest research around retail suggests that the future is more independent units, that people are not so keen on the larger shopping malls.
More than £100 million is being invested in markets by councils and private businesses, some of it from levelling up funding. Customers welcome the change.
I have noticed in recent years a little decline.
Obviously it's a traditional place, but like everything, it needs to be updated.
It could do with a revamp, and to make it look better would be an improvement on Leicester itself.
Closing for the last time, traders are moving to a temporary home.
You're going to come and see us, yeah? Take care. Thank you. I've seen my parents and all my grandparents all be here many years, so it'll be sad to see it go knocked down.
A cash boost keeping the heart of British markets beating. Yet they still need customers, or that life will slowly slip away. Will Hollis, GB News in Leicester.
What an amazing thing to think that market's been there for 700 years.
Yes, what I can't work out is whether it's... I mean, our guest last ad was saying that it's going to be sort of totally destroyed and not not going to have the same atmosphere?
Oh, yeah, one of our lovely viewers said a very similar thing had happened to them, that they were all told that it was going to be an incredible, expensive revamp, but actually it changed the area completely, and nobody really likes what replaced the original market.
No. Oh, well, we shall see. Anyway, let's talk to Tim Merriman-Johnson, Mr Moneyjar, who joins us now. Good to see you this morning. Look, in terms of what we do, we're talking about this against the backdrop of, you know, people really struggling at the moment. I mean, how do we actually save money? Do we need to... I mean, you buy cheap, maybe buy online, which people won't necessarily like, but can be cheaper. But also, I mean, do we need to clear out the stuff that we've got and make a bit of money that way?
Absolutely. Research from the Post Office has shown that this year 45% of us successfully sold online to the tune of about £5.9 billion.
Woohoo!
So it's quite lucrative, and it's a good way to make some money in the run-up to Christmas, but also a great way to declutter your house as well.
Yeah, I mean, we all know there's the very famous online store, eBay.
Yes.
But there are plenty of others, and some quite interesting ones.
Yeah, there's plenty of stores, lots of different kind of apps and websites, depending on what you want to sell. There are book-selling apps, there are websites.
Well, I got rid of a load of books.
Oh, you used one of those?
Tons and tons of books.
OK, great.
Through 3 or 4 different book-selling apps, because some of them will take books that others won't.
Yeah, and it's super simple as well. You just boot up the app, scan the barcode.
Yeah.
And one of the items that I found tends to fetch quite a lot of money is old textbooks. So if you've got old university textbooks, they're quite niche.
There's an outlet for selling them back to students or whatever, and they're very, and how many of us haven't got those sort of textbooks that you had at school or college or something, and they've been up there, you know, and you think, yeah, get rid of them. I did an absolute clear out, and it didn't make a lot of money, but it got rid of my books and I felt better about it.
The only issue is, of course, it's one thing saying, yeah, we'll sell the stuff, but that means you need people to buy it. And one of the big issues always is, perhaps even with a slightly older generation, is how do you have confidence when you're buying online and second-hand?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the platforms, most of them have ways of seeing whether there are verified sellers. You can look at seller reviews and buyer reviews. And one of the things that will happen when you sell a lot of the time is that the people who want to buy from you will DM you or send you messages.
Yes.
So just make sure that you speak to them, make sure that they're a real person, make sure that you're confident with the person that you're buying or selling from.
And also, I think if you're selling something big that needs collecting from you, don't necessarily trust. Maybe not. Don't be at home on your own or something. I always feel like that if I'm selling a bit of furniture or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't want people coming round
when you're on your own. Yeah.
It's also worth mentioning that for smaller items, Post Office introduced 2 new in-branch carriers in addition to Royal Mail, so you can now do DPD.
What are they called?
You can do DPD and every in addition to Royal Mail. I get the sense that you're.
No, not a fan. Not a fan. I've had so many issues with every.
Huge fan.
So, are you?
Yeah.
We had a delivery to my mother, a Christmas present she'd ordered, and the delivery said, you know, here's your proof of delivery. And it was a picture of it in the van.
Oh, that's
and it's nowhere near the house. And can you get a refund? The retailer won't refund it. They won't refund it, and Every so it's down to the retailer.
It's never turned up?
No, Every have classed
Still
it as
on the van.
they've classed it as lost. But how do you get your money back?
So you can't get the money back. The thing is that, selling online can be quite a daunting prospect, particularly if you're doing it for the first time. You've got all these different apps and websites that you can sell on. You've got all these different in-branch carriers. But if you use a post office branch, you can have that choice of who you send with, and you'll have the postmaster in the branch actually answer questions for you. So it's now easier than it's ever been to sell online.
OK. Well, it's a few quid in the pocket.
Just
She's never a bad
here and
thing.
there. No, adds up, doesn't it?
Good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Shall we catch up with the weather?
Oh, yeah, forgot to feel sorry for the postman on a day like today.
Yeah. Here's Annie.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's a bit of a wet start to the weekend across the UK. And there will be further wet and windy spells throughout the weekend, but also some sunshine at times, but certainly not through this morning for many of us. There are weather warnings in force for heavy rain across southern areas of the UK, as well as Northern Ireland and southwestern Scotland, where we've already seen a lot of rain so far this week. The rain will push up to the northeast. Behind it, we'll see some sunshine developing for many western western and central areas through the afternoon. Highs around 13 or 14 degrees, but the winds are going to be very strong. Particularly across the coast, we could see gusts in excess of 60 miles per hour, so do take care if you are out and about along these areas. Then overnight, we'll see the rain generally clear across southern areas, so a dry, clear night for central southern areas, but some cloud will linger across many northern areas and the rain will continue to persist across parts of Aberdeenshire. With more in the way of clear spells, it will be a slightly cooler night, but still a fairly mild night considering what we've seen recently. Sunday morning, we'll see a dry spell across many central and eastern areas, so some early sunshine to be had and light winds for a time, but then another gusty and wet spell of weather pushes through the course of Sunday. It does turn drier behind it across central and western areas once again with a risk of showers, but the winds do also pick up, so despite the 13 or 14 degrees, it will still feel fairly fresh.
Yeah, it's grim out there at the moment for a lot of people. Yeah. Miserable. I'll tell you what will cheer you up, though. Coming up later on in the programme, Andrew Eborn's Fake or Fact. It's always fascinating stuff and it's a lot of fun. So we'll see you for that in just a moment.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9:24, morning to you. We've been talking a lot about Christmas this morning. Well, no surprise, we all need to prepare things, but have you sent your Christmas cards? Last week, actually, it was in the papers, we were talking about the fact that apparently more and more people are not sending Christmas cards. Instead, they're sending messages out on WhatsApp and things like that, because it saves them money. But there's a downside to that, because what if you normally send charity Christmas cards? What impact is it all having on those charities? Well, someone in the know is our colleague, Alistair Stewart, who joins us now. Really good to see you, Alistair. What's going on then? What sort of impact is this having on charities?
Very good morning to both of you. Lovely to talk to you. And as you rightly said, I was last weekend discussing the idea of doing away with Christmas cards and just sending WhatsApp messages. And then the next day we got a Christmas card from a very good friend of ours, and he written in the card, or he and she, couple, had said, this is the last Christmas card we're sending out. Instead, we'll be making a donation to a charity. So I just phoned round a few of the charities that
Apologies, we've lost the sound to Alistair there. We'll try and get that back if we can, because I know Alistair's really passionate about this, and his wife actually is ambassador for a couple of charities as well, and they've apparently noticed a big drop in income. And actually, isn't it nice to get a card? I still think it's a really, really nice thing to do. I know it takes a bit of effort, I know stamps are expensive, but it's a lovely thing to do, and if it is helping contribute, rather than just making that donation, maybe that sort of changes how it works a little bit, and charities are getting that. But that's, I just think it's a really nice thing to be able to get a Christmas card and know that it's done a little bit of good along the way. Unfortunately, we have lost that line. That's gone down to Alistair, which is a real shame. But we'll try and... we got the gist of what he was saying. Maybe we can get him on a recording a little bit and tape it to play out later on in the day or something.
I know a lot of people are pointing out how expensive it is to buy a Christmas card, let alone send it.
Well, I bought second-class stamps this year.
So how much are they? 78p or something, aren't they?
Well, I bought 40 for £30. Work that out.
It's buying stamps. But first-class stamps are £1.25 or something, aren't they? It's
normally I just send everything first class. It was the first time I've just gone, actually, no, I'm sending second class this year.
We were talking about Ryan O'Neill, the actor who's died, sadly, at the age of 82. And I was saying, when I walked in this morning, 99.9% of the people in the office here never heard of Ryan O'Neill. Ryan O'Neill was such an enormous star, and I know if you are of a certain age... Did
you have a crush?
He was one of those people you had a poster of on your bedroom wall. Oh, yes. Yeah, I mean, he was massive, massive. And we were saying that, he had a very busy life. His daughter, Tatum O'Neill, won an Oscar at the age of 10. She still is the youngest person to ever win an Oscar in a movie that they did together called Paper Moon. And I was talking about her, and Karen has emailed in and said, Ryan O'Neill was also ex-father-in-law to John McEnroe. And I just checked that out, and you're absolutely right.
Well, and he married Tatum.
Yeah, John McEnroe, the tennis player, married Tatum O'Neill. So at one point, Ryan O'Neill was actually father-in-law to... That's Tatum winning in 1974.
Oh.
But she won it for Best Supporting Actress for Paper Moon. Still the youngest ever to win an Oscar. An incredibly talented actress, as you can imagine, but a very troubled life.
Oh, it's just a real shame when that happens, isn't it? Got to say, on a cheerier note, Grant says it's my birthday today, but still had to wake up early on board our cruise ship to watch the show. He's about 180 miles off the east coast of Florida.
Oh.
Good morning, Grant.
Good morning. Hope you're enjoying your...
It'll be about
cruise.
4:30, won't it? There, or something like that.
I don't know. Well, you never really don't care,
You don't care what the time is.
No, absolutely.
Have a gin and tonic, Grant, on us.
Oh, absolutely.
Lovely.
Yeah. Happy hour. And John from Basingstoke says, the Christmas lunch you were talking about, where you stuff a bird inside a bigger bird, inside a bigger bird, inside a big bird, it's called a royal roast, consists of a turkey stuffed with a pheasant, which is stuffed with a grouse, and then stuffed with a partridge. If that doesn't make you... there you go.
Anyway, coming up at 10 o'clock this morning, it's Saturday Morning Live with Ellie and Peter. Morning, you two. What have you got coming up?
Morning, guys.
Morning, guys. Yeah, we've got a really packed show coming up for you today, 10 until 12 noon, and we're really looking forward to it, aren't we, Pete?
We do. We've got the incredibly talented actress Stephanie Beecham, and she's talking about a film that she's done that's very close to her heart and very close to mine as well.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to that interview. And we're also going to be talking about Shane McGowan's funeral. I don't know if you've managed to see the clip, but it was amazing, wasn't it?
What
Fairy
a
Tale of New
celebration.
York, the dancing in the aisles. It was a celebration.
Well, it was sort of more a celebration than a mourning, which was a very interesting way to look at a funeral.
Yeah, so we're going to be having a little conversation about that. Taylor Swift as well, her Eras tour, you can't have missed it. It's been going on all of this year. Well, it's made over £1 billion, so we're going to be talking about that. And the loss of Benjamin Zephaniah.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well.
I was going to say, actually, the first billionaire to come out of music, just music.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's going to be a really interesting one. Yes, you're absolutely right. And Boris Johnson, the COVID inquiry. We want to know your thoughts on that. Obviously, there's a lot to be said about it, so we want you to write in and tell us what you think.
Yeah, gbviews@gbnews.com. And our favourite story of the show, we are so excited about this. This is an extra special board of directors at Winter Wonderland in London this year. We don't want to give too much away, so you will have to watch the programme to find out exactly who they are, but some great job titles in there, aren't there, Pete?
Very, very good. Right, we've got Chief Candy Officer, we've got Director of the Ice, we've got Chief Magic Officer. There's lots coming up. These guys are pretty special.
They are very, very special, so you do want to tune in. Don't miss that. We're doing something totally different on a Saturday, aren't we? We're doing fun, we're doing chatty, conversation on it, as Pete said.
Look, there's subjects that are serious, subjects that are lighthearted, and it's not about what we think, it's about what you think. So we want you to write in, we want you to tell us your views, and we'll be happy to discuss them.
Yeah, we'll see you 10 till 12.
All right, I've got a Benjamin Zephaniah for you.
Oh, here we go.
Get it right.
Brace yourself.
I used to think nurses were women. I used to think police were men. I used to think poets were boring until I became one of them.
Oh, that is great. Do you know what? I want to tell you something about Benjamin Zephaniah, because we were researching, weren't we, this morning. He was actually dyslexic and couldn't read or write properly until the age of 13. So how amazing is that? That he went on.
Successful writer, yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely,
it's
brilliant.
an amazing story. So, yeah, we'll be paying tribute to him today with Stephanie Techi.
Great stuff. Lovely. We'll see you two a little bit later on.
Thanks.
Winter Wonderland, you know, I did go a couple of years ago and it was fantastic. But if you want to eat there...
Eat before you go.
Cost a lot of money. Got 2 hot dogs.
Yeah.
It was £32.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
£32. I mean, they were nice.
Fill up before you go, or after.
There you go. Was I telling the truth or making that up? Fake or fact with Andrew Eborn is heading your way in just a moment.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life.
your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new
It's your new t-shirt. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9:35. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
We've been looking back at how Boris Johnson did during the COVID crisis, listen. Yes, during the COVID crisis. But actually, were those questions ever asked? We were wondering how he did during the public inquiry, of course, that was earlier this week.
Yes, well, let's talk to Head of Health Analysis for the Office for National Statistics. Former Head of Health Analysis, Jamie Jenkins, who joins us now. Jamie, good to see you this morning. I mean, look, in terms of health analysis, we're not actually getting any, are we, from this inquiry? It all seems to be about WhatsApp messages and personal relationships.
Yeah, no, good morning, guys. I think that's the key issue you just highlighted there in terms of the kind of the pandemic, because remember the first part of the kind of the inquiry, module 1 was looking at how we were prepared for the pandemic, and now module 2 is looking about some of the decision making. But I think there's a bit that's been missing in the middle here, guys, is that if you think the pandemic hit the whole of the world, and some countries fared much better than others. So if you take, for example, people talk about Sweden quite a bit. People did reduce their mobility in Sweden, but there was no kind of formal lockdowns. And then you look at the kind of excess deaths, so the number of deaths over and above what you would expect. They were lower there than, say, the United Kingdom, one of the lowest in Western Europe. And I think Boris was questioned quite a bit this week as well, guys, on the Eat Out to Help Out, and the barrister kind of forcing him to kind of go down the road about, OK, did this Eat Out to Help Out raise the infections across the United Kingdom? But if you look at the United Kingdom around about the same time as France, Portugal, we saw increases there where there weren't any. So I think you're right. We're not seeing much data. We're not seeing much analysis about what went right in some countries, what went wrong in other countries, because that's what we're going to learn. It's all about these WhatsApp messages and Partygate, and it's all theatre.
Exactly, that word, theatre. I mean, I can't help wondering whether in a couple of years' time we're going to have an inquiry into this inquiry. Because as a former head of health analysis, are you getting anything out of this? Are you learning anything that we may be able to use for a future pandemic, if and when there were one?
I think there are some little bits coming out, Anne. I think one of the key things you can look at when you do look at the data from the first wave of the pandemic, we did see a large number of deaths in care homes. So I think one of the lines of inquiry has been about that discharge policy, where patients who were in hospital, and we do know a lot of people had COVID and throughout the pandemic didn't know they had the virus. So many people are in hospital, test positive for COVID, but are in hospital for other things. So did we discharge some of those patients into care homes, which sadly led to a lot of loss of life there? So those are the kind of things that we are wanting to find out a little bit more. But obviously, we do know all about Partygate. We've had the police investigations into Partygate. But the barrister going over this again in the kind of code inquiry, that's not going to lead to any save of life in the future. And I think that's what we need to be focused on. We need to look at what happened well in other countries, what happened poor in other countries, and learn from each other. We all have the same challenges. We all approach it slightly differently. And that's what the focus of the inquiry should be, not what kind of Boris Johnson thought of a different politician or Dominic Cummings about my Hancock. That's all irrelevant, I think.
OK, look, Jamie, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. I think there seems to be a general consensus on the fact that this is all a waste of time because they're not asking the right questions.
I don't think we've interviewed one expert or commentator or observer of this inquiry who's felt that it's doing any good at all. No. And that is terrible. But do you think that feedback is getting back to them in any way at all?
I doubt it.
They are probably in their own world so much, everybody taking part in this inquiry.
And I hate to say it, because I might be wrong, but you get the impression they're all very pleased with themselves, don't they? The lawyers and things.
And there are so many of them.
But anyway.
I tell you, I predict. Inquiry into an inquiry.
Yeah, let's do something that we always look forward to.
Yes.
Don't we? Because it's a lot of fun and it's fascinating and it's Andrew. It does. It's Andrew Eborn's Fake or Fact. Morning to you.
Good morning, and it's a joy to be back. And I tell you what, we will do a Fake or Fact on the COVID inquiry because I like the idea of an inquiry into an inquiry.
Well, I don't like the idea of it, but I think it's inevitable.
It is inevitable, and we can work out the fact from the fiction because that's what we do in this section every week. And what I love is that more and more people are suggesting things.
Oh, good.
Good.
And so people at home, if you've got a story you want us to look at, do write in at Andrew Eborn, at Octopus TV and at GB News, and we'll look at that. At GB News. I remember where I am.
Yes.
It's got to be good.
So, what have you got for us?
Well, I'll tell you what, there's many anniversaries this week, including the death of Nelson Mandela. Now, interesting one. I'll tell you why it's interesting, because a lot of people don't remember when it was. When was it? Which year?
Oh.
Which year?
Point each. The closest one. Hazard a guess.
I'm going to say 2017.
2017,
no,
Anne?
A bit further back, I'd say 2010.
2010 is not bad. It's actually the 10th anniversary. I'll give that to Anne. It's the 10th anniversary, so 2013. He died on the 5th of December. But I'll tell you why it's important. There's something called the Mandela effect, which you might have heard of, which came as a result of Fiona Broome, who in 2009 basically felt that Nelson Mandela, together with lots of others, felt that he had died in prison in the 1980s.
Really?
And so she coined this phrase called the Mandela effect. And there's a number of these, which are basically, it's a truth, many different people having the same false memory. And I thought what we'd do today, in honour of Nelson Mandela, is have a look at some of those. So, for example, 81 years ago, also this week, Casablanca was released.
Yeah.
You remember the Casablanca? So who in Casablanca said the line, "Play it again, Sam"?
Nobody.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never seen it.
Do you want to hazard a guess? There's Humphrey Bogart or Ingrid Bergman. There they are.
Well, no, it would be
no, it was
her.
nobody. It was nobody.
It was her.
Her. Bergman.
Anne is absolutely right. It's one of the most misquoted lines in that sort of thing. It is, in fact, Bergman, which is right. And the line was Elsa, that's her character, says, "Play it, Sam." Humphrey Bogart didn't say anything at all.
No, she says, "Play it, Sam," and then she says again, "Play it."
Very good. I'll give you both one of those.
She never said, "Play it again, Sam."
So "Play it again, Sam" is one of the most misquoted things on that sort of stuff.
Well, it's a bit like Sherlock Holmes never said in the books, "Elementary, my dear Watson."
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, never said.
Mirror, mirror upon the wall, who's the greatest of them all? That was never said.
Wasn't it?
That was never said. No, it's magic mirror on the wall, who's the greatest of them all. So all of these are what's called Mandela effect. There's another one, Monopoly. At Christmas time, we're all getting the Monopoly kits out. So the Monopoly man, does he have a monocle? I've got a picture of him here. Does he have a monocle or no monocle?
He's got a monocle.
Got a monocle?
Hasn't got a monocle.
Hasn't got a monocle. OK, good heavens. Anne is motoring today. I love it. He hasn't got a monocle. And a lot of people, again, it's the Mandela effect. And the reason they make the mistake, they probably think of the Planters Peanuts chap.
They're mixing him up with another character.
It is. I've got a picture of him as well. I do my research for this. Right. This is the Planters picture character who's got his monocle, and there he is.
There you go.
That's what he looks like, and that's what people are confusing with at Christmas time. OK, Fruit of the Loom logo. You know the Fruit of the Loom logo?
Oh, you're right.
And it's got a cornucopia, or doesn't have a cornucopia. This is what they look like. I'll pull that up there.
Oh, right.
Which of those is the correct logo?
It's the second one.
Second one?
So without the cornucopia.
Without the cornucopia.
I think I'd go for that as well.
Well, OK, you are both right. You're motoring, absolutely. It is without the cornucopia, but a lot of people assume that it's there. Right, Tale of Two Tales. OK, you ready for this? Pokemon is one of the most valuable media franchises in the world, worth over $100 billion, what they reckon. Yeah. $100 billion. Pikachu's tail. Do you remember little Pikachu? Here he is.
Yeah.
One of them's got a little black marking on, and one hasn't. Which is the right one?
I'll go with the black mark. marking.
Black marking for Anne?
Go with the one without.
One without? You are, in fact, right. A lot of people think he's got a black marking, but in fact, it's all yellow, his tail.
You know what you've just done? You've done the right one, has always been on the right of the screen.
So I might mix it up a bit. Look at you. Right is right and left is wrong.
Well, that can be... I've watched those... detective movies where they show mugshots to
That's right.
and there's always a preference for the one on the right, I think.
And you're absolutely right, because what happens, and it's this language pattern that you can influence things. So when people are doing surveys, just watch very carefully the change in language and how you can sort of basically lead people. So if you ask somebody, did you see a black car or did you see the black car, all of a sudden you're changing the evidence on that sort of thing. So you're quite right to spot those language patterns. Talking about that sort of stuff, then Curious George, talking about tails, OK? Here's two pictures. Curious George the monkey. Which one's right?
Well,
one with the tail or one without the tail? He's a monkey.
He's got to have a tail.
Yeah, except the one on the right is probably the right one.
What are you going?
Anne's in a conundrum.
There you go. What do you reckon?
Well, you'd think he'd have to have a tail.
You'd think he'd have to have a tail?
The fact that you're asking means that it's probably that he hasn't got a tail.
OK.
I'm saying tail.
You'll say tail. Anne, I'll tell you what, you're on fire today. Anne, you're absolutely right. He has no tail.
How can
Isn't
you draw a
that
monkey without
shocking?
a tail?
Isn't that shocking?
Poor George.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'll tell you what, we talked about Pikachu and the whole Pokemon franchise. One of the biggest ones, far, far away in a galaxy, not too far from here. Star Wars have made about 70 billion glorious things on Star Wars. And I go along to all these little festivals, and there's a picture of me with a Wookiee the size of a totem pole. There you go. It's glorious and that sort of stuff. I've got a few of these.
I want to go to one of those.
Oh, yeah, I'll take you. I'll come and see a Wookiee. We get various other ones as well. There's me on the set, which is glorious as well.
Wonderful.
But one of those sort of things, talking about the language then, who said, Luke, I am your father? Luke, I am your father. Who said that line?
I get it. I don't think it was ever said.
I don't think it was ever said.
Look at you, see, we're on a pattern, we're a roll here. It was never said. Again, it's one of the biggest quoted things. James Earl Jones.
What did he actually say?
Do you know?
He said, did you say, I am your father?
He did. No, I am your father. No, I am your father. He didn't say, Luke, I am your father. I'm going to give you, I'll give you both a point for that. I'm feeling generous, which is good. Mirror, mirror on what we did. Christmas songs. You got time for Christmas songs?
Hold on. Because I see on the list, what colour is C-3PO?
Oh, you see. Well, come on.
See that one because
do you know what colour he is?
Gold.
Gold. There are, Stephen. And do you know...
gold,
do you say gold as well? Totally gold? 100% gold?
Wait. No. Oh, you see the picture on the right? If you're listening on the radio, this will drive you nuts, but the picture on the right shows C-3PO, gold, but with one silver leg.
Well, that depends which film.
Oh, this is rather good, isn't it?
He had the leg injured and it had to be replaced.
So there's a new leg at one point, and also in one of the films he has a red arm.
Oh, look at you. This is very good. This is excellent. So what do you think, which one's right?
Both.
Is the right or the left right?
Left's right.
So the left one is the one with on the screen.
Completely gold.
Completely gold, Stephen's saying. Anne?
Well, I've always thought he was completely gold.
You would always thought it was completely gold.
But I'm saying both are right.
You're saying both are right. Well, I think Anne's more right than the other. So the reality is he does have a silver leg. So when he started, this was the whole sort of principle. And you know what C-3PO, other than Charles III Post Office, which see what I did there? You change all of those. Do you know what it stands for?
No, well, he's a translator, isn't he?
Yeah. It's like ChatGPT, isn't it?
Yes, I don't know.
A commercial crew and cargo programme office. And I'll tell you what, we can make people lots of money in a pub. Time for a music one?
Yes.
Oh, yes, please.
OK, so this will be I'll Be Home for Christmas, You Can on Me. Bing Crosby sang it, Elvis Presley sang it, the Carpenters sang it, Perry Como.
Lie or depend, isn't it?
Yeah, oh, yes, very good. I'll Be Home for Christmas, You Can...
Depend.
Depend?
Don't know. Don't know the song.
I think we can play...
I'll be home for Christmas. You depend on me.
Depend. Say depend and say depend.
Yeah, go on then.
Well, it can either be count, depend, or plan.
Count.
Count. You can count on me. Right. Well, I think we have a little clip. We're allowed to play it. Play this clip. Here we go. This is...
I'll be home for Christmas. You can plan on me.
It was planned. that. I know, and so many people get it wrong because they all assume it's count. Not many people say depend, but I think that's.
You'll depend.
I'm going to give you a half because at least you're right.
Keep giving out all these points.
I like Andrew. You're very colourful.
I'm steaming ahead.
I'll tell you what, here's another Christmas one. Voted the Christmas #1 movie forever, which is bizarre. Die Hard.
Oh yes.
So something which has gone viral this week is a new Die Hard movie in 2024. We've got a poster of it as well because I'm good like that.
No.
Starring John Krasinski. Here he is. Look, he's got the white tee on, white vest on. Now, Jim, as you probably know, he basically, John rather, he played Jim Halpert in The Office in 2005.
He's a great actor.
Fantastic, isn't he? He was married, still is, I think, to that sort of to Emily Blunt. He played Jack Ryan, and he's also been in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So, do you reckon it's right? Is there going to be a 2024 one starring John Krasinski?
No.
Ye of little faith.
Because you can't
remake Die Hard.
It's
Bruce Willis.
It's Bruce Willis, and I mean, God love him, he's not well at the moment, but it wouldn't be right to replace him.
And even though that is something that's gone out and millions of views, and people say, "Oh my goodness, how exciting!" The reality is that particular picture, which is a real picture of him, you reverse. Remember, we do this. We reverse image search, and it comes from a still from 13 Hours: The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. That's where that still was from. But to our knowledge, they'll probably make it now. But to our knowledge, there's nothing suggesting it's going to happen. So all the big Die Hard fans, you're going to rest with Bruce Willis for the time being, which is interesting.
Well, it's one of the. It's interesting you get these franchises, and sometimes you just need to be left alone.
Yeah, no, you're right. And Bruce Willis has got a phase here at the moment. He's always my poster boy for AI because he basically licensed his name and image to a Russian telecom company for zillions of dollars, and they basically use that, and he can still earn money even when he's doing. And that is the future for actors, as we always talk about.
And Emily Blunt is still married to John.
There you go. See, there's breaking news here, which is got to be good.
Breaking news: they're still married.
They're still married. They still will be over Christmas because they're going to love all that sort of. Do we have time for one more?
Yes.
We do. Okay. So you remember the Pope and a Puffer? Look at this picture over here.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, it's a great shot.
It's a great Pope and a Puffer. And I told you beforehand about AI images, yes, and how you can spot them. Their neck's not quite right, the extremities, the fingers, and so on and so forth. Well, we are advancing every week with AI, and there's a new thing that's gone viral, which is Big Ben in a North Face jacket. Have a look at this.
Oh, wow.
That's brilliant.
Now, this is a video, and what you can see is the advances that we've had. You've got some people in the front, so you can see it's actually moving.
Yeah.
They've got their North Face jackets on as well.
It looks like it's shot on a camera.
Isn't that great? The interesting thing, as we play that again, you'll see they've made a couple of mistakes, though, because it's much better than just the still. So if you look at the camera which they're filming it on, they've actually got no image at all, so they're not taking a photo, so they've missed a trick there. But it's getting so if you look, if somebody holds up their phone, you'll see what they're recording on it. So on that particular one, there isn't an image there at all. But isn't that good? And the way it's advanced from the Pope with a Puffer. So all the time, the whole idea about fake images is incredible. But what's happened, many companies now, we've got free vote. It does look fantastic, doesn't it?
How would you... I mean, the thing is, though, unless you're going to... I mean, for your average Joe...
Yes.
How would you know?
You're going to look... If you see that on Twitter or whatever, you're just going to go... What the hell
and that's what people do. It was shared 4 million times, thinking that, hang about...
Especially down to London.
You would, but wouldn't you do that? And this is why I always say question everything. And this is what we love to do here. We highlight the ways that you can look at what we're doing, because this is a diseased information age, and we're drowning in that sort of stuff.
We've got one more, apparently, we can do.
OK, which one do you want to do?
The Looney Tunes.
Oh, you want to do the Looney Tunes one? OK, so which one... Oh, that's a good one to finish on, actually. So which one of these is correct, then? Let's have a look at this. So it's Looney Tunes... as in cartoons, or is it Looney Tunes as in music?
Ooh, that's
Tunes.
Which one?
T-O-O-N-S.
T-O-O-N-S as in tunes, a bit of a vowel movement. And you can have a look at that sort of thing.
Well, I don't know.
Oh, wait, which one? Final answer?
Well, I'm going to go for the right-hand one, the Looney Tunes.
You're going to go for the tunes as in cartoons, and Stephen is going for that one as well?
No, I'm going for... No, Anne's going for the other one.
You're
going for tunes.
Tunes?
I'm going for tunes.
Oh, your tunes. Well, I can tell you that Anne, yet again, is storming ahead, because it is Looney Tunes, is what you said, as in the music, and which is incredible. So I can tell you that the score at the end of that is Anne got 10.5 and Stephen got 5, and that's all, folks. Looney Tunes. I thank you.
Hey.
Why is that? Why have we got that so wrong, though?
But, no, you're superimposing your thought of the word tunes. You think it fits. But I think it was actually always the music. It was about the music.
It was, and that's what, and it's the cartoons and the tunes, and this is all about the Mandela effect and how you're reversing memories.
That's
from
so
that
clever. Mind you, there's a whole generation of people who don't know how to spell beetle.
That's right.
Oh.
Because they
As
think,
in the Beatles?
Because well, they don't have the beetle as in an actual little beetle. They think it's spelled B-E-A.
Yeah.
That's not.
But that's what I'm doing. This is what I love about this thing I'm doing. It's the educational side. So do write in. We'd love to hear from people,
Yes,
and we'll do many more next week.
Andrew, and he can uncover some more amazing mysteries.
You've got 10 seconds, Andrew. Why you came in saying that's the colour of watch faces this year? Why'd you say that?
Oh, well, because it is. This is anybody. This is the colour of this year. In fact, it's for new colour. Very rare.
Well, there you go.
Good idea for shopping things.
Excellent stuff. Well, that is it from us. Ellie and Peter are here with Saturday Morning Live in just a moment, and we shall see you tomorrow morning at 6.
Have a good Saturday.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's a bit of a wet start to the weekend across the UK. And there will be further wet and windy spells throughout the weekend, but also some sunshine at times, but certainly not through this morning for many of us. There are weather warnings in force for heavy rain across southern areas of the UK, as well as Northern Ireland and southwestern Scotland, where we've already seen a lot of rain so far this week. The rain will push up to the northeast, with behind it we'll see some sunshine developing for many western and central areas through the afternoon. Highs of around 13 or 14 degrees, but the winds are going to be very strong. Particularly across the coast, we could see gusts in excess of 60 miles per hour, so do take care if you are out and about along these areas. Then overnight we'll see the rain generally clear across southern areas, so a dry, clear night for central southern areas, but some cloud will linger across many northern areas and the rain will continue to persist across parts of Aberdeenshire. With more in the way of clear spells, it will be a slightly cooler night, but still a fairly mild night considering what we've seen recently. Sunday morning we'll see a dry spell across many central and eastern areas, so some early sunshine to be had and light winds for a time, but then another gusty and wet spell of weather pushes through the course of Sunday. It does turn drier behind it across central and western areas once again, with a risk of showers, but the winds do also pick up, so despite the 13 or 14 degrees it will still feel fairly fresh.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels.